Hello. Hello. Welcome to our workshop, and we're joined by the co-chairs of the Shelter Committee. If you can please introduce yourself and then proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is Craig Saddlemeyer. I am the co-chair of the Mayoral Ad Hoc Shelter Committee, and I'll invite the other chair to introduce herself.
Amy Smith, co-chair, live at 122 Bartlett Street in Ward 5, and also a downtown landlord.
Excuse me. Amy, can you please move the microphone closer to yourself? Okay, thank you.
And did you want to say that again?
Could you guys hear me?
Okay.
It's for our folks at home.
And I live at 75 Maple Street in Lewiston. For the benefit of folks at home, I'll just share that the Mayoral Ad Hoc Shelter Committee was established for the purpose of advising and making recommendations to the City Council on the subject of homelessness, shelters, and the range of housing options necessary to reduce homelessness in Lewiston. Our intention is to present a report by the end of July to Council that looks at the issue, the data, the current practices, the best practices and other practices taking place around the state, and try to give you information, options, recommendations to take action on. So the purpose of tonight's workshop is simply to hear from you so that we understand what items are of most interest, where you already have maybe the most passion or thoughts on a given element of the subject of homelessness in our community. And we'd like to know that so that it can be incorporated into the report, into the recommendations, into the information we bring back to you, and hopefully make it recommendations that are actionable by this council. So you were sent a list of questions in advance. I was basically going to go down that list to use it as a prompt for discussion. I don't expect, we don't think, we have 30 minutes for this, and if we end sooner, that's fine. We don't have enough time to hear from every counselor on every item, but I do hope to hear from every counselor to some extent on the subject. So with that, I'll just begin by asking the first question that was on the memo that was sent. I'll ask the first two questions, and I guess I'd invite folks to respond to whichever ones they're more interested in. So the first question is, what aspects of homelessness in our community are of greatest concern to you as a counselor? And then the second question is, what do you hear from constituents on the subject that you believe is important to inform any policy being developed? So what is either important to you personally, or what are you hearing from constituents that you think should really be informing policy being made?
Councilor Pease.
Hi, Greg. First off, I want to apologize for not returning your call. It's just been crazy for me lately.
That's all right. Apology accepted.
Okay. And I did get your new number.
Great.
Well, the first one on the questions, my biggest concern is students.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should come first above all, because they're our future. And if they don't have a good education, they don't have a place to stay, they don't have an upbringing, they're only going to become dependent on the system. So we need to make sure that they have that heads up. On as far as the second question is, everything I've been hearing, and we have to watch how I'm going to say this because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but they do not want to become a Portland. They said that Portland's got too many problems right now with homelessness. They keep bringing it on themselves. These are all things that they've been telling me. And they're worried about it. And they all said, we need it, but we have to make sure how we do it.
Yep.
So they don't discount the fact that we need it. It's just they don't want to become a Portland. That's what.
Understood. Thank you.
And I'll wait for the others until you.
Sure.
Councilor McCarthy.
Well, my biggest concern is obviously around the low barrier shelters mean, this is what got the ball rolling and has been a lightning rod on both sides. I think that I would like to see how other cities are handling it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, how we can do it and do it correctly without negatively impacting the area or the citizens of the city. You know, what kind of policies do we need in place? Do we need a licensing or some type of regulatory system to regulate homeless shelters? Because my understanding is we have none of that now. You know, I'm not looking to stop anything. I just want to do it right. And I think that if we can learn from the mistakes of other cities and do it right here, then we'll be far and away ahead of the game. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of things. When we're talking about, so I'm in Ward 1, and so I hear a lot from my constituents, particularly in the Sunnyside neighborhood, because of the prevalence of some of the homeless that are living in the woods in that area. And so I think it would be really important to include in your conversation maybe the need for a resource officer or somebody that could possibly go and do some outreach to some of these folks to see what needs they may have, why we're having these situations happening, and why that continues to build. I'd also like to have, because a particular neighborhood in my area that was close to the armory, there, I would like to see that there was some conversations from some of those neighbors that had concerns with the armory having the shelter there. And I would like to see that if we can invite some of those neighbors to give their input as to what they experienced after that happened and after those folks moved from the armory to the Ramada, and what they experienced specific in their neighborhood is what I'd be concerned about.
Thank you.
Councillor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say the aspect of homelessness in our community that is of greatest concern to me would be the individuals experiencing homelessness. And I say that because I feel like it's not one size fits all, and it really is a very individual thing. And I think, you know, I'll use the analogy of individuals experiencing substance use disorder. It's the most wildly misunderstood disease that there is. I believe that homelessness and work around coming up with solutions around homelessness is also wildly misunderstood. So when I hear from my constituents and I hear comparisons to Portland and that sort of thing, it's clear to me that they don't, I think just an education around what is no barrier versus low barrier, I think it's clear in my conversations sometimes that just more education is needed. Because I think if we're really going to come around this as a community and embrace this work, we need to fully understand it and not be bitter about it. And when I say we, I'm not bitter about it. I'm trying to say that, you know, I think that's an important concept for us to keep in mind as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for, that's a great start to the discussion. Thank you for all that input.
Were there
Amy?
more?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Councillor.
Councillor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I represent Ward 6, which is not only the largest landmass, but it tends to be the more rural area of the city. I've heard now for 3 years the concerns of people in my ward as to what they want and what they don't want. And I think that has been adequately expressed by Councillors Pease and McCarthy. Portland is nothing for a good example for us. I received an email, as I think all of my colleagues did here recently, from a lady somewhere in Texas. And she wanted to turn one of the city's beaches into a closed optional beach and insisted that we do something about that. I said, well, I really have any sway with the people in Texas. So I looked up on the website the particular city, about 3 times the size of Lewiston, and I contacted the mayor. And we had a little chuckle back and forth about the email that was sent. And then we discussed homelessness. I noticed that he was on several committees in the county in Texas that he was in. And we talked about homelessness. I said, what do you folks have a no or low barrier shelter. No, don't have any. He says, we tend to take care of these problems before they become that much of an issue. He says, and hopefully we're successful. Well, that kind of ended that conversation right there, because they hadn't experienced it, and it was quite obvious they didn't want to. On the other hand, I don't think there's anybody sitting here in this room tonight, at least at this dais, that does not think that there is a problem. But I think the majority of us here, as I believe the majority of my constituents, say if we're going to do something, let's do it right. Let's not just dig a big hole in the ground and start pouring money after it, because that's not going to solve anything. There are several things that need to be in place. I think some of the things that have been mentioned, do we need any type of regulatory action? What can we do if things get out of hand? There's a number of issues in that regard. And that's all I've ever been about. And I think we've been mischaracterized a number of times by people. It's not that we are against the homeless, it's just that we are for the people of Lewiston, and we want to make sure it's done right. I can't see just throwing millions of dollars up in the air and having it land somewhere there. That took care of the problem, when in fact it does not. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Well,
I
I'll say
just-
something. It's not yet, but it's.
Okay,
it's coming.
oh, that's fine. I just want to give everyone their chance. All right.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Certainly. I'm not going to wait for the rest of the questions. I'm just going to come up
That's
and ask
fine.
you a couple of
That's
questions.
fine.
Would you define for me no barrier, low barrier, mid barrier, and super strict barrier? Explain to me the differences.
I'll give a brief response, and I'll also say that tonight is not a presentation of the findings of the committee, so I'm not really looking to get into
Well,
the presentation mode.
It's difficult for me to
but-
say I don't like this if I'm using the wrong terminology.
Yeah.
And what one group of people perceive something different.
I understand, yeah. So I'll answer your question to the best of my ability. There is not a fixed definition of a low barrier shelter. It's a relative term. The way it is used in the service community that works in homelessness is to recognize that different shelters have conditions for staying there. And a low barrier shelter is relative to the other shelters in a community, perhaps has less conditions, or at least less conditions so as to be more universally accessible to people who are homeless and are seeking shelter. But again, there is no fixed definition for that term. The recommendation for a low barrier shelter was made in the Plan to End Homelessness that was published back in, I believe, 2009, and I think it was being used in the same way. It was recognizing certain barriers that exist to people that need services in the community, and was characterizing the need for a shelter based upon the recognition of those. And I guess the only other thing I'd add is, I do think the term, at least at this point, has become a bit of a loaded one, and perhaps a distraction from, I think, the conversation that what I'm hearing from the council and what I hear from other community members that I talk to is just, what are the tools that work? How do we, what tools do we have in the community, and what tools do we not have right now to help transition people out of homelessness into stable housing, into employment, or connecting them with the services that they need. I think that's all I'm prepared to say about it tonight. But with that said, I welcome what more you have to share on it.
Have you spoken to all the existing shelters that are in town to see how they're running their operations?
Yes,
Is this committee, excuse me, not you personally?
Yes, we have people. So we have people that represent various shelters on the committee. I have reached out to the other shelters that are not represented on the committee, and I've been in touch with them to a degree. We haven't finished getting their input, but I have reached out to them.
How many shelters do we have in the city?
I'd prefer to stick to the questions and get
I'm sorry,
input, because
I
I
thought
don't.
this was a workshop. My apologies. I thought this was a give-and-go situation.
Well, as I said, it's not a presentation, and I just want to make best use of our time in terms of getting your input.
So you don't want to answer my questions? Okay, thank you.
I'd like to
So-
just interject. So we do want to answer your questions, and so tonight we want to know what your questions are, because
I
the
just
report will
asked
answer
the
the
question,
questions.
Amy.
Right.
So I just asked the question, and I asked, so I'll just ask the questions. I won't expect you to answer them
Okay.
at all.
That's
So you can
perfect.
just take some notes.
Yes,
Uh,
happy to do that.
What is the population of our current shelters? Are they full all the time? Are they empty? Where are we at? Because I've done my homework also, and I know a couple shelters have been 60% full occupancy all winter long. They're not 100% full. What is the population of the people in the shelter? From which region are they from? Where are they from? I've also done my homework, and we're about 60% from Lewiston, 40% are from elsewhere. How many people do we consider, what is our homeless population in Lewiston? Do we have, and I know it's a fluid, I'm not expecting 103 or something like that, because it's gonna be a fluid thing. Summertime, wintertime, it changes. I totally understand that, and I'm not trying to hold down, but just to get an idea of what is our scope of homelessness in Lewiston? Where are we at? How many people do we have in shelters? How many beds are there available right now in the city of Lewiston? In discussing this and my 10 years of experience in working with a lot of homeless people and working on the street, the number one problem in the state of Maine and in Lewiston, and the shelters that I've spoken to have agreed with me, and I can name the names, that 85 to 90% of the people that are in the shelters have drug problems or mental illness. That is the top priority. So my question is, are we looking at the wrong avenue? Should we be looking for a drug rehabilitation or try to help out those issues? I've personally driven people around. We took a Saturday afternoon, my wife and I, trying to find a place for somebody that was an alcoholic, trying to detox, and we drove to 4 different communities before we could find some place to detox. St. Mary's is full. There's no place. Try to have your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, whatever, friend that wants to get off from drugs. Mm-hmm. There's no place to find help for them. So I question, if we have such a high population number right there, and this is confirmed by the shelters that I've spoken to, should we be looking at a facility that helps out that, rather than a shelter? I have no problem with helping them out, helping anybody out. There's no help. So it's a spiral situation. I'm not in favor, and I guess, as Council McCarthy said, putting some kind of rules for a shelter. Just like there are rules for the marijuana industry, just like there are rules for my industry, just like there are rules every place else. So to say a no or a low barrier shelter, I am definitely not in favor of. To putting some kind of guidance and guidelines, I'm in favor of that. I'm also want to end the adversarial back and forth particularly with me and the 3 other counselors. I never said I didn't want a shelter. And if I ask a question, I hope that we can get some answers to the question. I am concerned. I'd like to see some help. Drug addiction and mental illness is far more problematic than homelessness. If you fix those two, proven 85 to 90% of them will not be homeless. So that's just the information and my firsthand experience that I've had working in the industry.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you, Councilor LaChapelle. This is exactly the kind of input we're looking for, and I apologize for my confusion a moment ago. We are absolutely taking questions, and we'd like to have answers for you when we do the report. I simply thought you were looking for answers so that you could give input, but anyway, thank you for all this. And did you have something you
Nope,
can add?
I think that's great, and the more the better. Keep them coming,
Yeah.
because we want to make sure that whatever we produce is going to be in a format and have the content that you guys need. That's what our job is, so.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. So I guess since Councilor LaChapelle kind of went through a bunch of these that were already in here, I would just like to add a couple of things that I was thinking of
Please.
as well. So, I'm not sure about the percentage rates that Councilor LaChapelle just reported to know. So I do think that those are important things that we need to try to find out if we can. I also think that we need to understand that maybe there are a lot of people that are homeless in our community we're not going to get direct answers from or be able to find out all the information we want. And I think that we need to recognize that. I would like to make sure that when we're looking at possible locations and where they may be, we want to include our business community, our economic development department, to ensure that everybody's comfortable where a location could be. And it's actually in a location that is going to be helpful for the services that are needed, but also something that our whole community is comfortable with as well. I think it's extremely important that when we are moving forward with something like this, we want to ensure that for complete success, we're going to need our community to really buy into this and really want to do this for what's happening. And I'd also like to see if there's any information that we can find out. I know that we have a great group of people that work at New Beginnings, but I believe that we probably have some more kids that are not even in that program. So if we can find out a little bit more about, you know, how many teenagers, what are we really looking at when it comes to, I can speak from my own experience that there have been many children in my children's lives that have done couch surfing. Personally, I would consider that to be a child that is homeless, and I think that that's part of the conversation we need to have. I also think that we need to really look at families that are in these situations. You will have a lot of families that are in situations, dad's working, they're living in the car during the day. These people are not doing anything, they're not on any, there's no drug situation happening here, substance abuse or mental health issues. This is actually an economic issue and they need help. So I think we need to look a little bit more on that and what services are available for them. When we talk about the existing homeless shelters, a lot of those places don't allow some of these folks that we need to have these services provided to. And when we look at a shelter that's just specifically for men with 11 beds, what happens to the mom with 2 kids? What happens to the teenage girl? Those sorts of things. I think we really need to gather that kind of information so that we can discern how those other shelters are really being used. I personally believe that we do need a low barrier resource center in our community, a place where we have available resources in one place so that somebody doesn't have to go all over the place. Sometimes it is just hard enough to get a person to go to the one place. We have those services in a convenient location where everything is available. I think would be a more ideal situation to really start addressing the issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Pease.
May I address something to Councilor Scott?
I think rather than comment on each other's comments, I think we should just provide feedback to the co-chairs.
Yeah, I guess all I wanted to say is clarification on homelessness. HUD versus McKinney-Vento. Two different definitions. If a kid in high school is couch surfing, they're not considered homeless under HUD. That's the only thing I wanted to bring up. And then I'll go on the other side.
Thank you, Councilor. Please proceed.
So yeah, I'll keep pointing to questions, but I think, you know, we've got the ball rolling here, and I guess whenever folks are ready to jump to the questions they're most interested in, we can do it that way too.
Councillor Jelinas.
Thank you. I would just comment on a few things here. I am not going to get into low, no, strict barrier, but I will just talk about needs. And I think one of the most important things here is it needs to be more than a shelter. It needs to be really an area that is providing wraparound services. We've heard the analogy before, but it's not just feeding fish, it's teaching them how to fish kind of thing. And I think this is an example of where we need to really come around and provide the support. I serve as the co-chair on the Substance Use and Recovery Committee, and I think there's a lot of commonalities. While I don't believe that, it's always correlated, I believe that it often is, and it would be really neat to see this community come together, those two committees come together, and really look at what it is that we might be able to do, especially when we're thinking about folks who are homeless and folks that are also experiencing substance use or mental health issues. So I would agree with that. I appreciated your comments, Councilor LaChapelle, but I don't think it's one or the other. I mean, I think there's a blend there. So those wraparound services, really providing those services beyond just a shelter, beyond just a bed, whether that's career counseling, whether that's, just pointing out different resources, but not just pointing it out, but having it there and available. I think that's going to be hugely important as we think about transitioning folks eventually from homelessness to securing housing, permanent housing. I just also wanted to comment on one thing. Do we believe that a shelter should be licensed? I believe yes to that. And I think I'll just leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Everyone's so polite today. Councillor Clement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Scott brought up a point a minute ago, and I'll just kind of twist this around a little bit. She mentioned the word community approval or something to that effect. In the law enforcement community, of which I was a part for many, many years, we had what was known as enforcement tolerance. And basically that meant that if you could not have basically a majority of the support from your constituents or from your residents in that community, you could not be effective. They had to believe in what you were doing. I mean, if you were out there running a speed trap every day and just pummeling people with speeding fines, pretty soon your support would dwindle and go away. I think that there are a couple of officers here in the room that are working in different roles now that would agree with me on that. The community has to buy in, and I'm hearing that. If we can educate and get the majority of the people, I'm not talking 29 or 30 people coming in here and filling chambers. I'm talking about the majority of the people who vote and pay taxes in town. If they will come forward and say, yes, we want this, we're willing to do this, we're willing to support that, then you're going to have the support of the council. But as stewards of the taxpayers' money, these are the questions that keep coming up. Why? What controls do you have? I think that maybe there might be something to look at in the manner of bonding, if we're going to put public funds out there, particularly any funds that have federal strings attached, because if the federal strings get yanked due to an ineffective program, the program shuts down or whatever, the city could very well end up returning those funds to the federal government. So in essence, we're paying twice for the same thing. And I think we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to be proactive in somehow doing what we can to protect those funds to make sure that they're properly used. And if it takes a bond, I mean, if as a government you hire a treasurer, you're going to bond that treasurer. Hopefully you're never going to need that bond, because the treasurer is hopefully never going to embezzle or do anything with the public funds. But you have that bond there for a reason. And I just think we need to look at something like that as well, just to make sure that we protect our investment. I don't think anyone's against investing, but it's something new for the city, and people don't like change. They're very leery of change. And this is a subject that has scared many a person, and those that I've talked to. They're just not ready to jump on the bandwagon. So we've got to do something to convince them and take it forward that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you, and thank you both for coming out tonight. As a member of the Ad Hoc Committee, I wanted to give my fellow councilors a chance to speak mostly, but I did want to share that the overwhelming majority of communication that I have received and that has been shared by my fellow councilors from the public has been in favor of doing something and doing it quickly. People don't necessarily have specific answers, as I wouldn't expect just any member of the general public to, who's not an expert on this topic. But the sense that I get from our constituency is that they really want something to happen, and we can't keep waiting around to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to agree with Councilor Janias about a wraparound. We do need wraparounds. In fact, I was thinking of adding one to the wraparound, which would be a job placement. Somebody can help them when they're in the recovery to get them interested in a job or put them into a job, something of that nature. And yes, I know we need drug and alcohol and all those types of counselors. There's no question there. As far as what we see as services in the shelter, I mean not services, but what we think the shelter should have. Well, staff, of course, is a big thing, but security. The staff needs to be secure. They need to be protected. We need to have the guidelines for how these homeless shelters operate. We need to have guidelines of what the person that's in this position has to abide by, has to complete, has to see through. We also need somebody that's very bilingual. We need somebody that can communicate with some of these people. Those are just a couple of the things that I think we should look at. The other thing is, yes, we need to have some control, licensing or something of that nature on the shelters. And I don't care if we don't even charge them for it, but we have to have them apply for it and fit a criteria in order to receive it. The other thing is funding. That's a big thing. How are we going to fund it? Is it going to be city? Is it going to be state? Is it going to be federal? Is it going to be independent or a combination of? Those are some of the things we have to look to see what we're going to do. Because this is going to be a costly affair, no matter how we look at it. I don't care if it's a 10-bed or a 100-bed. It's going to be costly, and it'll have to be maintained. So those are just a few of the questions I had. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up Councilor Pease, couple quick questions. What are, not expecting answers.
Got it.
What is the size of a shelter? What is the recommendation from the committee, the size of the shelter? How many beds? And Councilor Pease's question, financing. Is this a private shelter or privately financed shelter, or is the committee looking for assistance from the municipality? That would be a question, because that would change drastically on some of the, if the taxpayers are involved, I think it would be, there'd be more questions or more involvement for regulation. If the taxpayers are not involved, it's a private industry, that's a private business. And there's, like, there's a difference. There's a difference. So that that would be the question. Taxpayer funded, not taxpayer funded. Where are we at and how large of a facility are you looking at? So if we come in and saying a 10-bed facility and you come back and you say we have approximately 500 homeless people in the city, how effective is that? It's effective for those 10 people, I understand, but what size we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. How are we doing on time? I want to be respectful of
We
the
probably,
time.
well, I confirmed with our administrator, and we do have a few more minutes, but,
Okay. So I can take a few more comments if anyone has them.
Councilor Pease. Or Administrator Hunter.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes, you are.
I would be curious to see how the state's hubs
Yeah.
impact some of these decisions, and how does that layer work?
Yep. Great, thank you.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My other thing is, I was wondering if Amy had a few things she would like to say. I know she's been quietly and writing a lot of notes, but she's heard a lot of comments here, and she hasn't had a chance to speak. I would like to give her a chance.
So we are on a fact-finding mission. We really are just here to listen.
I accept that.
So, and just so you know, a lot of the time spent in our shelter committee meetings have been around the need for things like definitions of terms, education, because I'm new to all this personally. So we've been asking a lot of questions and learning a lot as a group. We're bringing in experts, we're bringing in people from other cities, so we all just want to understand it deeply. But if we deliver a report that doesn't answer your concerns and your questions, then we will have failed. So we really, this is just another step in our sort of discovery process. But thanks for asking.
So I'll just add that, of course, if folks are welcome to reach out, email us directly, or give us a call if there's more input you'd like to provide that you didn't get a chance to tonight. Councilor LaChapelle, did you have another?
Councilor LaChapelle.
One last thing. Thank you for taking the time to come to the council and ask the questions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing what's on our mind also, giving us an opportunity to share. We're not evil people. We do care. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, and thank you, everyone, for your input. I mean, we really do value it, and it really will inform our work. So I'm hopeful that we can come up with solutions together.
Councilor Pease, did you have one last thing to add? We have a couple seconds left.
Okay. If you're interested, I have some information as far as homeless students concerned.
Yeah.
I've been working with the school department as well as the store next door, and we're trying to put a package together to understand what we can do and what we can't do. So I've been looking into it. So just so
Thank
All
you.
right, I'll call you again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Did you have anything to
Oh, I'm
add,
sorry.
Councilor Clement?
Just one thing I think is very important, it was just brought up here. If we're going to have a discussion and have a report, like anything else, I think common language is going to be very beneficial. And definitional language is certainly going to have a place in that.
Yep.
We have to know what you're defining and what you're telling us. So I think that's very important, if
Yep.
we're going to be on the same page. I mean, I can hear one thing, you hear the same thing, and we're talking about two different issues altogether. So let's make sure we're on the same page, that we have common definitions, and we'll take it from there. Thank you again
Absolutely.
for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Craig and Amy, we are honored by your service. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Wonderful evening.
I'm going to try. Administrator Hunter, we have a presentation on LCIP.
Well, it's not really a formal presentation. It's just, we had the presentation on the LCIP. We talked about the capital projects during the budget process. We are getting ready to, at the first meeting in June, approve the bond order. And so the document that was included in your package on the front page involved the projects that impact the 80% rule. And then on the back side, you have all the utility recommended bonds. So the total bond package as it stands now is $19,398,925 for all services. I just want to make sure, to kind of test the waters, make sure all of the projects are a go. Recognizing we are still over the bond limitation, so I will need a supermajority vote to exceed that. And then I guess the last question I would ask is, given the rising interest rates, is there any palatability of looking at bonding some of the projects that were deferred with the hope of getting a better interest rate. However, nobody has that crystal ball, and the part of if we turn into a recession that we anticipate, they could be looking at reducing those interest rates to counteract the recession. So I kind of give you both sides of the coin for your consideration.
What are you looking from?
Just a
looking
nod,
for?
or if there are any last minute questions on any of the projects, if everybody is comfortable with the dollar amounts. And if that's a go, then the first meeting in June, we will actually be doing the bond order.
Councilor LaChapelle?
The deferred amounts, deferred until next year, deferred to where?
Typically, the council takes those, the staff takes those projects and looks at what was already slated for 2024 and future years, and looks at if there are any new priorities that have come to light during this fiscal year, and then kind of reshuffles them at that point in time, recognizing the city council always has the authority to move projects either forward or into the future. Or I should say backwards or into the future.
The Lionel Potvin Park Trail and the Plord Walkway Trail, is that the new park area? What is?
The Lionel Potvin Park Trail is not part of the exchange. That is slated to get funded in next year's next fiscal year, but that's coming from a different funding source. I will not have to issue new bonds for that. That's in that other sources column.
The Plord Walking Trail?
The Plord Walking Trail right now is looking at, based upon the wetlands that they're finding there. They knew there were wetlands present, but not to the volume that are there. So the National Park Exchange had already approved this location as an exchange location. We will need to go back and get approval on another parcel to actually replace it. So you will see the $200,000 is kind of looking at preliminary design work and evaluating other parcels, and then we will have to submit that to get approval. And that obviously does not happen overnight.
Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy?
Looking at, excuse me, looking at the dollar amount, I'm going to find it very difficult to vote for anything over 100%. So I don't know if there's a prioritizing of what you would like to see that would help us make a decision on what to move, at least myself. But yeah, I'm in favor of the cap that was put on. I know it was 80%. I know that in times, obviously, we can exceed that, but I would find it hard pressed to exceed it by more than the 100%. What's being retired this year, we can replace, but that's about as high as I would like to go. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Yes, Administrator, on the back page, about $7 million that's going to be bonded is pretty much a push, because that's all going to come back from fees that we're charging, water department, sewer, stormwater, correct?
That's correct. Everything on the second page is funded through user fees.
It's funded through user fees. All right. So that's being responsible there. So if we took $7 million off from the 16, we're down to about 9,
Actually, you're down to about 12.
Yeah.
12.
So if I could, Counselor, revisit Counselor McCarthy's, because I think you're on that same train. Right now, it's the city's projects and the school's projects that are subject to the 80% rule. And just as a reminder, that 80% rule is the debt service that is paid off in the last 3 years, the 3-year average. So right now, between those two requesting units, we are requesting $12,378,925, which is just shy of $5 million over the limit. Councilor McCarthy was talking about 100% of the prior 3 years. So this limit, the $7,423,000, is based upon the 80%. So if you look at the 100% of the average 3 years, you're taking that $12,378,925, and you need to reduce it to $9.3 million. So we are still looking at, in that last column there, reducing it by $3 million to get to Councilor McCarthy's 100%. I just want to make sure everybody understood that piece of it.
Councilor LaChapelle?
I guess looking at it, I think interest rates are not going to come down for a very long time. I don't necessarily have a problem with going over it now with the full understanding that next year we're not going to be at this rate. It's going to be maybe 70% or 60%, just like our budgets. We're going over budget right now, but just being prepared for the next year, knowing that interest rates are different, this might be the time that we jump on it and get a favorable rating. But we're all sitting here next year, and if I go in favor it, I'm just saying ahead of time, next year I'm not going to be in favor of going, unless interest rates drop to 1%, and there's a whole different story. But that's not going to happen. So I would lean more towards in favor, understanding next year, please don't bring us something that's going to show us at this percentage rate or this amount. That's just where I'm standing from my standpoint.
Councilor McCarthy?
Interest rates are just one part of the cost. Construction costs are through the roof right now, and I don't see them coming down anytime soon. So any savings that we would have on the interest side could be more than spent on the construction side because of the market that we're in right now. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not for going over the limit just because of the interest rate atmosphere, because it's balanced by the cost of construction right now. I mean, asphalt is through the roof. Everything is really ridiculous, and at some point, oil will have to come down. And oil is the driver of so much of the construction costs. I think that in a year from now, when we're looking at this, construction costs will be less. And so if we pay a little more on interest rate, we'll break even or save on the cost side of it.
I understand, but I'm concerned that construction costs necessarily won't be going down. Labor is a huge part of that, and we were in a labor crunch even before the pandemic, and I don't see that easing up anytime soon. I would recommend to the council that we move this forward now while we have the ability to.
So at this point, I would be prepared to I'll check with staff one more time to make sure there are no projects that need to move either into it or could be moved out of it. But this is pretty much what you're looking at for a financing order at that first meeting in June. And then at that point, we will see how the votes go, unless you have other deliberations that you want to evaluate. Okay.
Thank you, Administrator Hunter. this concludes our workshop, and we'll be starting the council meeting here shortly. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to try to get the executive session out of the way still?
What time is it?
What time do you have? 6:50, we have 10 minutes.
Is that realistic? And then to build in a short break?
Yes, I think it is possible.
I'm willing to try.
Okay. If
can
nothing
we-
else, we can continue it after the meeting if we need to.
Okay. Do we need a vote to go in?
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
May I have a motion? Councilor
Second.
Pease, followed by Councilor LaChapelle, followed by Councilor Pease. All in favor? We're heading to executive session, and we should be back
And this is to
shortly.
discuss a real estate matter.
Yes, that. Welcome to our City Council meeting. Please join me in the pledge, and we'll have Kelsey Bushi lead us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We will start off this evening with a short presentation. We have Kelsey Bushi, who is the Androscoggin County Teacher of the Year. And if you can just join me up front here.
The Maine Department of Education and the nonprofit Educate Maine recently announced the 16 county teachers of the year who are now in the running for State Teacher of the Year award. Kelsey Bushi, the K-6 visual arts educator at Lewiston's Robert V. Connors Elementary School, is the Androscoggin County Teacher of the Year, and we are pleased to welcome her here this evening. Kelsey was born and raised in Lewiston, is a graduate of Lewiston High School, and has her Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Art Education from USM. She's been teaching art in Lewiston for 9 years. While teaching art, she is also a co-advisor of the school's civil rights team. She also has 2 children who attend Lewiston Public Schools. Kelsey was nominated for Androscoggin Teacher of the Year by Lewiston School's Chief Academic Officer, Sue Williams. We are so proud that a Lewiston educator has received this distinguished honor. Thank you for sharing your skills, talents, and creativity with Lewiston children, opening their eyes to new and exciting possibilities. Thank you so much.
I'll let you hold it. Okay. Madam Clerk.
All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Councilor of Ward 4.
And Madam Clerk, what minutes are we proposing to accept this evening?
Sure, it's really up to the council. You have before you the March 15th, April 5th, and May 3rd minutes. The April 19th went out to you late today, so I know you didn't have time to read those. But it really is dependent upon the comfort level of the council. If you're prepared to vote for March 15th, April 5th, and May 3rd, that would be fine.
How does Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Clement? Do we feel comfortable?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Sure. Councilor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5? Yes. Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
And Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. We now have public comment. So any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record, and please indicate if you're a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to City Administration Office. And yes.
My name is Pauline Goodis. I'm a resident of Lewiston. I'm also the former chair of the Lewiston Planning Board, as well as the chair of the Community Development Block Grant. My idea of coming here tonight is there's been so much conversation both in public at city council meetings about ethics and how ethics are important. I served as chair of the planning board with a number of members, including Councilor Scott. And it came to my attention after having a conversation with a member, or should I say a former member of the planning board, on how he was asked to resign from the planning board at the direction of the mayor so that the mayor could appoint someone else that he wanted on the board, since the alternate position would not have to be approved by the council. Mr. Roger Fuller was the alternate member of the planning board. He showed up at most every meeting. He was prepared. He was asking the appropriate questions, and questions that I hadn't even thought of, and had positions. Mr. Fuller and I did not agree a lot of times on political or philosophic ideas, but he always asked pertinent questions, in-depth questions, questions that made me stop and think about what my position was. And I have a real problem that what has been set is a new precedent. If the Gang of Four, as I have seen in public media, on Facebook, at council meetings, and done, if the member of that Gang of Four were the mayor and asked a board member to resign, what would the position be of the public, the press, the Facebook cronies, and the council? I really feel bad for Mr. Fuller. He had no reason to be asked to resign. And I really wonder if the new person that was appointed as an alternate realized that the mayor went behind everyone's back and asked a sitting board member to resign. Because what has happened now, you have set the precedent for every mayor forward to start asking board members to resign. And that is not good for the city. It is not good for developers. It's not good for anybody. And as far as I'm concerned, it's probably one of the most unethical things I have seen in city government. And I really think that the council needs to address this issue with the mayor in private. That's all I have to say. And I really think that Mr. Fuller deserves an apology, not only from the mayor, but from the sitting council, because this was backdoored as the council has objected to other things occurring. Mr. Fuller did not deserve this, and neither did the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilors, my name is Jason Lavoie. You've seen me here before. I live at 242 Park Street in Lewiston. First of all, I'd like to thank the councilor that showed up for the bulky waste and trash removal, Councilor Harriman. Appreciate him showing up. It was a great day. We took care of a lot of trash. I can tell you that. And I showed up on Saturday to volunteer. Second of all, I'd like to address, you just had a workshop on homelessness, and I watched it on YouTube, and I know you don't allow public comment during workshops, so I would like to address a couple of things that I heard. First of all, I heard an issue about mental health and addiction, and I will just remind you that mental health is a medical diagnosis, and we should not group people as being chosen to be homeless because of mental health. I will say that first of all. Second of all, I heard an issue about jobs. Not everyone can have a job due to a disability. There are people on Social Security and SSI that cannot have a job due to disability. And I'll remind you, they are on SSDI and SSI, and they cannot hold down a job because they are in a wheelchair or they have a mental health diagnosis. It is not their fault, and I feel like there were some counselors that pointed that because somebody doesn't have a job, they are required to go out and get a job. And that cannot be an issue, because not everyone can hold down a job because of mental health and disability. I'm sorry if you have a job and you have a disability, but not everyone can do that. And I feel very sorry that we would force somebody that because they live in a shelter, they have to get a job. And I'll remind you that the shelters that we have now, people cannot hold down jobs because some people work overnight. And our shelters close overnight right now. And how are they supposed to hold down a job when the shelter closes and come back and sleep during the day if they work at night? And I just want you to keep that in mind when you discuss shelters, because some people work overnight and they are homeless. It is not easy to be homeless and hold down a job. I just want to make that clear. I appreciate your service, and I look forward to a robust discussion on shelters and homelessness as a former homeless person myself with a mental illness that just happens to have a job but wasn't always that lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Madam Clerk, agenda item number 1.
Sure, item number 1. Item number 1, public hearing on a new application for a liquor license for Burnt Ends Barbecue, 736 Sabata Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new application for a liquor license for Burnt Ends Barbecue, 736 Sabata Street.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease,
Second.
followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Discussion from the council. Public comment? Councilor LaChapelle.
Everybody should go try the place. It's excellent. It's really good. And it's about time we have something else besides a fast food, or it's different. So I encourage the public, I encourage everybody to go. It's an excellent, I was there this week. It's an excellent place. I'm happy to see we're getting some different restaurants coming to Lewiston. So I just encourage that kind of development. So I'm all in favor.
Their cornbread is really good. Further discussion from the council? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Agenda item number 2.
Item number 2, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Lewiston Recreation Department, 65 Central Avenue. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to the Lewiston Recreation Department, 65 Central Avenue.
So moved.
Second?
Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Madam Clerk, agenda item number 3.
Item number 3, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Ramada Lewiston Hotel and Conference Center, 490 Pleasant Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to the Ramada Lewiston Hotel and Conference Center, 490 Pleasant Street.
So moved.
Councilor Johannes, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing for approval of an outdoor entertainment permit for the Liberty Festival. Requested action to conduct a public hearing on an application from the Independence Day Committee for outdoor music concerts to be held at Veterans Memorial Park and Simard Payne Memorial Park and surrounding areas on July 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as part of the Liberty Day Festival, and to authorize a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to the Independence Day Committee for the outdoor music concerts, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Land Use Officer, and Code Health Officer regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Clement.
Yes, sir.
Discussion? Public comment?
Jason Lavoy again at 242 Park Street. I would just like to say on behalf of, I think, most Lewiston residents, it is great to see the Liberty Festival coming back. What a great opportunity we have to bring our city together after a worldwide pandemic. Awesome. Thank you.
Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
And Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7 to 0.
Item number 5.
Item number 5, public hearing for approval of an outdoor entertainment permit for the Celebrating Lewiston event. Requested action to conduct a public hearing on an application from the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council for outdoor music concerts to be held at Mike McGraw Park on July 9 as part of the Celebrating Lewiston event, and to authorize a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to the event organizers for the outdoor music concerts, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Land Use Officer, and Code Health Officer regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
Second?
Madam Clerk, or Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Jelinas. Discussion? Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the City Council Advisor to the Lewiston Youth Advisory Committee, I just want to shout out to the amazing work these young folks are doing to put this event together. Today I received a preliminary schedule of what they're planning on doing, and some of the things I will just highlight. Not only do they have musicians coming and food trucks and historic talks and all sorts of events throughout the day, they're also holding a scavenger hunt, and our students have actually put together a Google search that's going to be a historic scavenger hunt for students and community members to do and be part of this project. They're also doing a honeycomb display, which is the honeycomb of our logo, our city logo, and what they're doing is they're sending out large pieces of the logo to all the elementary schools so that the students can build in, write in, draw in pictures of what they think represents the city of Lewiston to them. Those pieces are all going to go back to the park on the day of the event, and they're going to be building a huge puzzle of our honeycomb with all of these pictures and everything that the kids did. 3 of the students that are on the Lewiston Youth Advisory Committee were also at our top 10 luncheon today for Lewiston High School. So I just want to tell you that these kids are absolutely amazing, and I've begged them all after they graduate from college, which they all are going to college, to come back here and please continue to do the wonderful things that they're doing in our city. Thank you.
Further discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, public hearing for approval of outdoor concerts in conjunction with the Great Falls Brew Fest at Simard Payne Park. Requested action to conduct a public hearing on an application from Baxter Brewing Company for the outdoor music concert to be held at Simard Payne Park on Saturday, June 25th, and to authorize a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to Baxter Brewing Company for the outdoor concerts, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Land Use Officer, and Code Health Officer regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion? Councilor Scott?
I just want to point out that's 6 agenda items in a row of all the great activities we're bringing back to the city. So I say yahoo! I can't wait for this summer.
Please drink responsibly. Further discussion from the council? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 7.
Item number 7, public hearing for approval of an outdoor entertainment permit for the Memorial Day Parade. Requested action to conduct a public hearing on an application from the LA Veterans Council for outdoor music concerts to be held during the Memorial Day Parade on May 28th, and to authorize a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to the event organizers for the outdoor music concerts, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Land Use Officer, and Code Health Officer regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion? Public comment?
Jason Lavoy again, 242 Park Street. I don't mean to take the heat from Kathy or the city administration, but I'll remind you that volunteers are needed to put flags on the veterans' graves for Memorial Day, as required by state law. Great to do. If you have a chance to do it, please volunteer. Thank you.
Back to the council. Councilor Pease.
I'd like to add to that, that the major areas is St. Peter's Cemetery and, oh shit, I forgot the other one. But there's two major, yeah, I know, I forgot that.
Can't say that.
Bleep, bleep.
Riverside Cemetery.
Riverside Cemetery,
Riverside
that's right.
Cemetery.
And, yes, it's a worthwhile effect. Thank you.
Please volunteer.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, the city administrator just asked me just to give a quick clarification on that. So that is correct. So state law passed several years ago that the city is responsible for having flags placed at the individual grave sites of all veterans buried within the city. We have about 15 cemeteries in the city. Most are smaller and are taken care of either by really small nonprofits or the abutters of the cemetery. But the two large ones that Councilor Pease mentioned, St. Peter's has over 4,000 flags that needs to go out, and Riverside Cemetery has just shy of 2,000 flags that go out. Both of those events are looking for volunteers. The time is this Saturday, or the date is this Saturday, May 21st. Riverside Cemetery is at 9 a.m. They're located on Summer Street, and that effort is being coordinated by the local Knights of Columbus organization. And at 10 a.m., also this Saturday at St. Peter's Cemetery on Switzerland Road, they're also looking for volunteers, and that effort is being coordinated by the LA Veterans Council. Anyone who's looking for more information, that is on the city website. There are recommendations to please bring sunscreen, a hat, water, work gloves, et cetera, but all that's on the city website if folks want to double check that information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk, where is St. Peter's Cemetery?
It's on Switzerland Road.
Where's that?
Yes, off of Upper Main Street.
Oh,
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So all us French people are buried there.
Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8, public hearing for approval of an outdoor entertainment permit for the 2022 LA World Refugee Day. Requested action to conduct a public hearing on an application for an outdoor entertainment event for the World Refugee Day celebration and to grant a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to the Immigrant Resource Center of Maine for outdoor music concerts for the annual celebration to be held at Simard, Payne Memorial Park on June 20th, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Health Officer, and Land Use Inspector regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
So moved.
Councilor Scott, followed by Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment? Or, sorry, discussion. Did we have discussion?
I can wait.
Oh, public comment?
Well, Mr. Mayor and City Council, I wasn't aware this item was on the agenda tonight, but I just wanted to give praise to Fatuma Hussein and the IRC for the work they do. My name is Tobin Williamson. I live at 361 College Street here in Lewiston, and I am the advocacy manager with the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition. And just wanted to echo what I said earlier about giving kudos to Fatuma and her organization. She's well known throughout the state for the amazing work that she does in the immigrant and refugee community. So just, again, wanted to give her kudos. Thank you.
Back to the council. Councilor Jelinas.
This gentleman just took the words out of my mouth, but just, it's a pleasure to be here tonight and reviewing all these event applications and just the different types of events that Lewiston's going to be hosting. It's awesome. So really in support of all this.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, and I would just like to reiterate that I would invite anybody who's never been to the World Refugee Day. I have not missed one since it has been started in our community, and it is one of the best times that you can have. It really is phenomenal. The people, the music, the food, the food. It's just really a great time, so I'm looking forward to it too.
I was there a few years ago, and yeah, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 9.
Item number 9, public hearing for approval of live music at Simard, Payne Memorial Park in conjunction with the Bates Dance Festival. Requested action, to conduct a public hearing on an application from the Bates Dance Festival for live performances to be held at Simard, Payne Memorial Park on July 19th and 24th, and to authorize a permit for an outdoor entertainment event as required by the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 1, Section 10-3, to the event organizers for the outdoor event, contingent upon positive recommendations from the Police Department, Fire Department, Code Land Use Officer, and Code Health Officer regarding compliance with all regulations and compliance with all city ordinances.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion? Public comment?
Hi, I'm Shoni Courier. I'm the director of the Bates Dance Festival. I live at 445 College Street here in Lewiston. There's a typo in there. The event is actually the 19th through the 24th of July.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Back to the council. I think the Bates Dance Festival is absolutely wonderful to have in this community, so thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 10.
Public hearing and first passage for amendments to the solid waste ordinance regarding the E-Pass program and spring cleanup program. Requested action, that the proposed amendments to the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 62, Solid Waste, Article 1, in general, and Article 3, Hazardous Materials, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and that the public hearing on said ordinance amendment be continued for final passage to the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Harriman. Before we open up for discussion, anything you'd like to add, Director Brenchick?
No, I just wanted to say that this was going to be the beginning stages of the new rollout. I know we've been looking at all the changes up at solid waste and the automated scales. So that will start the beginning of July, and just correcting the ordinances is part of the first process. And we'll also have a workshop coming up so people will know more about it. So just lots of exciting things happening at the solid waste facility. Another exciting event for the city of Lewiston.
Thank you, Director Brenchick. Discussion among the council? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes?
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 11.
Item number 11, public hearing and first passage to amend the administrative ordinance to establish the Lewiston Public Art Committee as a standing city committee. Requested action, that the proposed amendments to the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Boards, Commissions, Committees, and Bureaus, Division 4, Lewiston Public Art Committee, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and to continue the public hearing for final passage to the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle,
Second?
followed by Councilor McCarthy. Discussion. Councilor LaChapelle?
Mr. Mayor, last evening, I was at the Downtown Association meeting, and they brought this topic up, and they were really excited about it. And one of the questions were, are we going to incorporate the Historical Review Committee, actually make them both one? And a lot of other municipalities do that. They are concerned on, which we brought up, they are concerned on privately owned businesses that want to put a mural up, that this art commission doesn't have authority over a privately owned business. So they were concerned on that. From all aspects of the community that I've spoken with, they're excited about it and they like the idea. So I guess at what point do we see their bylaws, or is that going to be put together and come back to the council for approval, or how does that work?
Administrator Hunter?
Yes, at your May 5th workshop, Becky Conrad, who's also here, did the lion's share of the draft of the public art policy that was presented that night. And it seemed like there was consensus to get the members appointed to the group and then have the members review this for one last vetting. And then that would be brought back to the city council at that point in time.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion among the council? Public comment?
Jason Lavoy, 242 Park Street in Lewiston here. I'd just like to say how important public art is. Rather than seeing a plain downtown or a plain area of Lewiston, a nice artwork is always appealing to our city, especially our most economically disadvantaged area, like the tree streets. Whatever beautifies our city is awesome. I was especially happy to see the Lewiston sign going up down at the Veterans Park. I think that's awesome. Public art is very important to our community, and we have many talented people within our city, so hopefully there will be artists right within our city that can have a chance to shine their artwork, because we have so many in our city that shine when it comes to art. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy McDonald. I live at 40 Ware Street in Lewiston, and I am the president of the Liberty Festival. I was contacted a couple of weeks ago by Neocraft Signs because they're the ones who are manufacturing and installing the Lewiston letters. So a few years back, the gray wall, we had painted that back wall gray. And then we used to borrow a flag from Neocraft Signs to cover that wall on the 4th of July. And one year we couldn't, so I got some guys together and they were supposed to paint stripes on that back wall, and what they did was the star that you see and some flashes coming off of it. So anyway, Neocraft contacted me a couple of weeks ago and they wanted me to repaint that wall a solid gray because they're putting the Lewiston letters in front of it, and then they intend to invite some local artists and local just residents of Lewiston to construct a mural or graffiti or whatever on those letters. So they wanted the wall to be painted gray. So I thought, okay, let's paint the wall gray. And so I got the paint, and I got a couple of people to paint the wall all lined up. And then I thought I better call, because when we did what's down there now, I got a call right after the 4th saying, what did you do? So they didn't like it. But anyway, so now so I called to find out, and I was told, no, do not touch that wall, because this public art committee and the talk was going to be happening this evening. So, but the wall, I don't know if you're all familiar or not with it, but so the upper left corner is all breaking down. There are holes in the wall, and there's other places that the concrete's coming off. So the wall needs repair. So I guess I need direction on whether we can paint that wall or what we do, if we can repair it. Neocraft Signs has put a lot of work down in there. They've done a stage, and they've done great work, and they've got outlets down there to put power, and it will be able to be used by a lot of different organizations. So I just need direction whether I can move forward and paint it. I know this committee is supposed to start in 2023, I think, when I read on the...
It depends on how quickly they can get formed.
Oh, okay.
So.
Perhaps, I'm sorry, are you done? Or anything else?
I guess that's it. I just need to know what direction to move in.
Perhaps Administrator Hunter, we can have administration follow up with Kathy?
Yes, we, Kathy and I have been speaking on this. I guess I would be interested, is there any objection from the council if that is repainted at this point from a council level? And then I would reach out to Becky to get her thoughts on it as well.
Okay, at this point, yeah. Thank you, Administrator Hunter. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just ask, because I know the people that painted that on there, and they are very proud of their artwork, and they are local artists in our community that have done a lot of work in our community on a volunteer basis, on regularly volunteer in our community. And so that I would ask that we reach out to the person that did that and give him the opportunity to maybe be the first one to do one of the letters, if that's something, and make sure that he's part of that conversation, because I really value the work that he does, and I think it would be an important piece to have him be part of this conversation.
That was my thought, actually, is contacting the ones that did come down and paint that wall.
Thank you.
Councilor Pease?
Yes, thank you. I have no objection to painting the wall, even though I hate to see that mural leave. But what's to say that they don't come and do the same thing after it's painted gray? What's going to stop them?
I don't know. I mean, since it was painted, there's only been a couple of people that have added to it. Like somebody did a flag up in one corner, or a rainbow up in one corner, and someone signed their name to the bottom. And there's been a little bit of some spray paint thing on it, but not very much has happened to it since it was originally painted. I had actually thought about, like in the center, there's a big star that's painted, a red, white, and blue star, and I wondered if maybe we could leave that star and paint everything else, all the splashes of paint that are around it. I had thought about that as well.
Just that, oh, sorry. It's just that Neocraft has done so much down there. I'd hate to disappoint them, and they were only asking for a small favor, painting that wall. I think we should do it.
Do you have something to add, Administrator Hunter?
I think I'm getting the tendencies. Let's work with Kathy, and then I'll reach out with Becky Conrad, and then meet with the Neocraft and see if some resolution can be reached at that point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Further public comment?
Thank you, Becky Conrad. I do live in Auburn. Administrative Hunter has referenced me a few times, so I'll just clarify. So this is a great example of why a policy in a committee will be helpful. These decisions tend to be ad hoc, and they tend to be needed to be handled quickly. And so a policy and a committee that's committed to this on a regular basis will bring these to you in a much more methodical way. And you'll have a system, I think, that you'll be pleased with once that committee gets to work and brings that final recommendation to you for the policy. I have been the co-chair of the Public Art Working Group that was put together for a grant, and I would only add to what's been said tonight that I think it's public property, and it really does fall in the jurisdiction of the city to decide what to do with it. And the policy that you'll see coming forward in the second draft from the committee will talk about deaccessioning, what to do when something is in need of repair. Those are all the components of the policy that you want to pay attention to. So I think we're learning as we go, and I think it's, to echo the other public comment earlier, the more we have, the more we learn, and what a beautiful community will become as a result of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Becky, for all of your work on this. Back to the council for discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 12.
Item number 12, public hearing and first passage to amend the zoning for a portion of 311 Main Street from the Community Business District to the Centerville District. Requested action that the proposed amendment to rezone a portion of the property at 311 Main Street from the Community Business District to the Centerville District, receive passage by a roll call vote, and to continue the public hearing for final passage to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease, seconded by Councilor LaChapelle. And before we begin, Director Hediger, would you like to add anything?
Sure.
Start us off, rather.
No problem. The planning board did provide a recommendation to you folks, unanimous, to rezone this section of property. This is where Walgreens is right now on Main Street, and there's a vacant lot to the right of Walgreens that had a kind of like a pink brick building. That's Brink. Next to it, that was demolished. They want to build a smaller Walgreens pharmacy next to that. The zoning line goes right through there between the Centerville zone and the community business zone. In order to make the new site work where the demolished building is, they're looking to bump the zoning line north. So the current Centerville zoning district would go closer to the existing Walgreens at this point. Upon that being rezoned, then they would go through the development review with the planning board for a new building there.
Discussion. Thank you, Director. Discussion from the council? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 13.
Item number 13, public hearing and first passage to amend the land use code and map to add a contract zone overlay to the downtown residential zoning district for Site 2 of the Choice Neighborhood Transformation Plan for properties located along Bartlett Street, Walnut Street, Pierce Street, and Pine Street. Requested action to approve first passage of the amendment to the zoning and land use code and map to add a contract zone overlay to the downtown district for Site 2 of the Choice Neighborhood Transformation Plan, and to continue the public hearing for final passage to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
So moved.
Councilor Jelinas, followed by Councilor Harriman. Administrator Hunter, am I to understand that there is a brief...
Sure. I thought I'd take a moment to outline what the Choice Neighborhood Grant is for the members of the public that may not be aware of that. That is a $30 million project that the city received. With that project, it's estimated to have between a $60 to $100 million spin-off effect. Its goal is to replace distressed housing, create a more healthy and safe neighborhood, not only for the residents, but also offer different services for job training, child care services, encouraging other investment in the area. The project is slated to preserve 92 affordable rental rates and to add 93 new market rate and workforce units for that area and that neighborhood. The goal would be, again, to increase spin-off services for that area, including the most recent Promise Early Education Center, who expanded to 1 College Street. That's adding 50 new child care spaces. They have a community food center that is looking at opening and providing food service and an incubator space. So there's a lot of different options going in that area. I would also remind the council that the city of Lewiston is one of the smaller communities that have received such a grant. They are looking at the spinoff is estimated based upon the larger cities that have received such grants. For $1 of grant space, they are anticipating attracting at least $7 of non-federal money related to spinoff impacts in areas such as this. If larger cities can see the transformation of their areas that were targeted in their grant area, imagine a smaller city like Lewiston, what the transformation could be. So if there are any questions regarding the grant, I know the mayor is looking at hosting an ad hoc forum, or the forum at the library. Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to remind people of the date and the time, that would be great.
Absolutely. It's not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. I believe that's May 25th. And Yes, it's Wednesday, May 25th. We will have Misty Parker. We'll have Chris Calmary from Lewiston Housing. Misty Parker's from the city of Lewiston. And we'll have Catherine. I apologize. Catherine, can you please remind me of your last name? Catherine Elliott from Avesta, the development officer there, will be joined with Mark Lee from Harriman Associates, who will be the moderator. It will be a discussion about the development that's happening in the neighborhood and how it's going to be great for the entire city and the ripple effect that will come from that approximately $90 million investment in our city. It's pretty incredible. How did I do, Administrator Hunter?
Perfect.
Okay. Director Hediger, yes, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Just to build upon what Heather mentioned, this is a contract rezoning, so it did go to the planning board. The vote was 5-1 on this to approve the contract rezoning. Some of the aspects of the rezoning are to increase the density slightly over what's there now. You could do up to, right now the current zoning allows for 1 unit per 1,250 square feet, and they're asking for a density of 1 to 1,000 instead. They're asking for some relaxation with the parking as well to accommodate it, as well as some of the space and bulk standards, but it's not anything really significant with respect to the space and bulk standards. It's more to establish a maximum setback, so for some reason we work with them to keep them from building a building too far back from the street. We want to keep a common scheme of development out there, that the buildings are somewhat in proximity to the curb line out there. So they've added some provisions in there that will keep that building from going too far back on the property. Not that we think that's going to be a problem. We've been working very closely with them to try to make this work. Should the rezoning get approved, then they would be subject to development review. This is in the design standard districts. Some of you folks were involved with the design districts and getting those approved. So we've started discussions with them as well. As to how that's actually going to work with the design district overlay. They did talk to the planning board back in December as well in a workshop. They tried to give them some guidance as to how this document would be crafted tonight, so they knew issues like impervious, open space, and the number of units would be something that needed to be addressed. So that's what you have before you tonight. And Catherine Elliott is here, and she can answer any other questions.
Do you have anything to add at this point, Catherine? Can either come to the front or yeah, there we go.
I have some images that I could pull up on the screen if that's helpful to provide context for any of the pieces of the contract rezone request, or happy to take any questions that people may have.
If you can pull up the images, I believe that will be helpful.
Great. All right, so the image that you see up here is the overall, where's my cursor? So there are 13 parcels that are configured within this development, and you can see in the top right-hand corner is the historic Dr. Milton Wedgwood house, which is part of this, which would be preserved and rehabilitated as part of the development. And then all of the vacant parcels that you can see here, as well as the building immediately to the left of the Wedgwood development, are the parcels that are in question here.
David?
That concludes the presentation. Why is it?
Doesn't seem like it's connected.
No, it's not.
While we iron out some technical difficulties, I guess any questions from the council at this point?
Is it frozen?
Councilor McCarthy.
I just have one comment on this. It seems like, and this isn't the first time, but it just seems like we're changing the rules to fit the project instead of the project fitting the rules. And I don't think that we do that on a regular basis, so I'm just a little concerned about just wholeheartedly changing rules. The parking, it's not a small change. It's cutting it in almost half from 1.1 parking spaces down to 0.6. I know that in discussion they talked about trying to get people to stay in these houses, encourage them economically to better themselves through training, through counseling, and to stay in the neighborhood. And I just feel that as people get more affluent, cars come with money. You know, as people get more, you know, they'll buy cars, and then you'll have an issue with lack of parking because you haven't even got one spot per unit in the development. It's like half. So I just can be concerned about that.
Is the presentation working?
Yes, I think we are.
Okay, maybe do you? We'll proceed on at your discretion. You can either respond to Councilor McCarthy first, or continue with the presentation, then respond afterwards, and then we can go from there.
So, Councilor McCarthy, in response to your concerns about the changing of the zone, I think one of the items that we are considering here is that the comprehensive plan does indicate that small level changes like this are appropriate, especially in infill development situations where we are trying to manage some close proximity to lot lines and other considerations. We have a really unique opportunity in this development because we have amassed several parcels together, which is unusual for infill development. This is over 1.5 acres of land. The typical parcel would be about 5,000 square feet. So the standards that would apply to redeveloping a single 5,000 square foot parcel can be very different than when you're taking that larger view for the 1.6 acres. And the opportunity that we have here is to think critically about how the buildings relate to each other on this site and how to create a really effective campus development that will fill in these vacant parcels and not only create significant economic investment through the construction costs and the jobs supported through that work, significantly increasing property value and tax roll within this development. And then there's also that waterfall effect that happens when you have that type of development over time. So from our perspective and what we understand from the planning board's support of this is that the type of requests that we are making are small enough in scale that they are reasonable given the impact that it can have in the longer term. And then your concerns about parking, I will speak to in a moment. Thank you. These were some of the key items that were outlined within the transformation plan as goals for these 3 phases of development that the city administrator mentioned. So there will be 3 phases of housing development over the course of the choice grant. This is just the first phase. And the goal for this first phase is to achieve a lower density development. So we're mimicking the size of buildings that are already within the neighborhood, that we have larger units with more bedrooms, and also more storage within the units and other amenities within those units to help elevate the expectations that people can have for their housing in this neighborhood. So that includes things like washers and dryers, cooling within the units, garbage disposals, dishwashers, some of those higher end amenities that you don't even always see in market rate development. So that's one of the primary goals, is that we are creating very high quality units that people of all income levels will choose to live in to create some of that neighborhood stability over time. Maintaining green space so that there's recreation opportunities for children and their families. Accessibility is also a key item. Because of the age of the housing stock in this neighborhood, most buildings don't have any elevator service. So the ability for people who rely on wheelchairs or other mobility devices to access any apartment other than a ground floor unit is very low. So we are focused on that accessibility in all of the units that we're developing. Energy efficiency, and then again, that neighborhood fit, so that we're building something that contributes positively to the neighborhood. This is the site plan, which I'm sure you have seen. So the Wedgwood development in the top left-hand corner of that middle block, and then a total of 7 new construction buildings. The A and B buildings are each 8, the tan and brown buildings are each 8 and 9 units. And then the larger buildings, D and G, in the top and lower right-hand corners are each 12 units. And this just gives a sense of what the elevations would look like. So the top one is along Pierce Street. So those 2 buildings off here to the left. Oh, you can't see my. So filling in that gap with those 2 buildings along Pierce Street. And then across the street, you have the Wedgwood building, which would be rehabilitated, and then a new building next to it to create that really solid, block along that street. Pine Street, that's the other side of the Wedgwood building in the top. And then the full length of Bartlett Street would be new construction. So those 2 larger buildings on the corner, and then smaller buildings within the middle of the block. And then this shows the end of Walnut Street, so that 4-story building viewed from below. And so there are 7 items that are contained within this contract zone request. I'll kind of fly through these because I know you all have seen this information before. One of the primary items that we are requesting is a very clear statement that we are allowed to build multiple primary structures within the same lot. This is to help manage some of the administrative aspects of strange lot lines. You can see on the left-hand side is an image of what we could do if we are meeting all of the impervious surface and setback and other items within each parcel, versus the right-hand side shows the simplification of those lot lines, which makes it a lot more straightforward. And in this case, because it's a single owner, single financing package, single construction contract is appropriate because those buildings will all be unified together as part of a single project. The density increase that was mentioned, you can see, so this is in reference to building C, which you can see is just south of the Wedgwood house. So that's 8 units. And what we are wanting to do is achieve the street view of that lower image. So the top image that you see there with Wedgwood house on the left-hand side, without a density increase, we wouldn't be able to build any additional units along that street front. And we feel that the street view is significantly improved by that additional density in the lower image. And it fits better with the neighborhood and mimics that neighborhood fit, is more consistent with the character of that neighborhood, which is a key priority within the design district overlay and some of the changes that the planning board has made to their design review process. The setback would be to allow us to build to a setback up to 15 feet from the property line. This is a regulatory item. We have 2 issues that are pushing this. One is setback requirements from electrical poles as they relate to both Central Maine power requirements and OSHA. So the distance that we need between those poles and buildings for safe construction and maintenance of the buildings, and then as well as CMP's ability to service those poles. And then the second item is there is a historic deed restriction that goes back to earlier than 1900 based on our research so far that prevents any development along Bartlett Street that is closer to the street than 12 feet. So based on the current ordinances, we would not be able to develop anything along that street given that minimum setback of 12 feet. So we are requesting an increase to that setback for 15. The difference there is because our interpretation of the 12 feet is such that we need to have room to place our footers behind that 12-foot line. Impervious surface ratio, this shows, you can see that the items that are considered for impervious surface are rooftops, canopies, walkways, paved surfaces. So basically anything up here other than green in what you're seeing. The one caveat being that the gray area around Wedgwood should actually be green because that's grassy area. And because of the our intention to mimic the size of the buildings within the neighborhood. We have shorter buildings that have larger footprints, which means that we are increasing the impervious surface due to the increased roof sizes. And then also achieving the parking that we have on site. That all counts towards impervious surface, as well as walkways, many of which, especially those ones highlighted in yellow, are for accessibility, so for access for folks. And this just shows on the right-hand side, that little dot in the top is our block as it relates to the downtown area. And then you can see the zoning map on the left-hand side. There is not an impervious surface cap for the Centreville zone, so we are very close to that. So there is precedent within the neighborhood for that type of density. And this is an item that we have passed by Lewiston Public Works, and we would work during development review to make sure that we have appropriate stormwater management plans in place so that we are capturing and preventing runoff and not overburdening the city's water system. Parking, so I think there are three things that you have to think about with parking. One is how it affects the site design and what you can achieve on the site. One is a second is how it affects residents and how residents experience living within a development. And then the third is how it affects the city, because the reality is that if we don't put enough parking on the site and there is not enough parking in the neighborhood, it does have a negative effect. So on the site, you can see we are achieving, we have these smaller scale buildings, and this shows 48 parking spots. And we are already asking for an increase to that impervious surface ratio. So the impervious surface ratio and the parking requirements are often at odds with each other, especially in an infill development situation. So from our perspective and from the architects and engineers that we've worked with on this site plan, their perspective is that this is a positive site plan, that it has an appropriate amount of parking as far as how the site will work for people and the site as a whole. The second item that we obviously need to be thinking about is how people will use this site. What we have found through research done by Lewiston Housing Authority is that the average ownership of, let me take a step back. So we know that half of the people who will live in this building currently live in buildings that are owned and managed by Lewiston Housing Authority. So they already have data about that car ownership, which is less than 50%. So what we know is that there's going to be reduced demand for parking on site based on what we know about the people who will be living here. So we are anticipating lower demand. And then we are also recognizing that this location is such that it is very walkable. You can see on the maps above, less than a 10-minute walk from either of the locations on the site, both to the city parking garage where there is parking available, and to the CityLink bus stops, which have numerous access to, I think it's 8 of the local lines, as well as regional connectors. So there is transit access. And one of the things that we're prioritizing here is in response to the comprehensive plan and goals that the comprehensive plan has for increasing usage of public transit, and recognizing that is good for the city in the long term. And there are people who will never own cars, either by choice or because they cannot afford them. And we believe there are significant opportunities for transportation other than relying on a car in this neighborhood. And then the third is what the impact is on the city. So one of the things that we did as we were working towards this site plan was consider the location and the neighborhood and the on-street parking that is available in the neighborhood. The site plan that we have shown here, you can see some of the that there are street parking spots shown. These are existing spots. There's currently 71 parking spots on either side of these 4 streets, Pine, Pierce, Bartlett, and Walnut, on either just circling this development. So there's currently 71 spots. After development, we would be reducing curb cuts and increasing that count to 77 parking spots. So there would be a net increase in the number of street parking spots. And then beyond that, Lewiston Housing Authority also researched the average usage of those street parking spots and found through data collection multiple times a day over the course of 2 weeks that the average usage of these parking spots was 15 parking spots taken, which leaves a net of 62 parking spots after development that would be available. So we strongly believe that there is enough on-street parking and off-site or off-street parking to accommodate the needs, and that in this infill development situation, it's appropriate so that we can achieve the density that is necessary for a very strong downtown. This is another small item that we're requesting, which is a slight narrowing to the width of the drive aisle of this parking area behind these two buildings. This is so that we can maximize the amount of parking that we have there. This has been reviewed by our engineers and signed off by Public Works, and we would continue to monitor that to make sure that we are designing this appropriately. And then the final item is for some additional standards that would typically be triggered by that first request for multiple buildings on the same site. For us to not have to comply with those additional requirements. This is typically tied to more suburban or rural development, greenfield development, and not infill development. So as I said earlier, we are requesting that multiple building opportunity, which is unique to an infill development situation. It happens to trigger this additional language that would not typically apply, which has requirements for additional green space and other considerations that just don't make sense in an infill development situation. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that if you have them, and I'll wrap up there.
Anything else, Councilor McCarthy? Okay. Further discussion from the council? Councilor LaChapelle.
As far as parking goes, I own a building that has over 30 units within 200 feet of this development. I have no issues with parking. We have 5 spots for the 32 units. There's parking the street over that you can rent. I'm a huge proponent of eliminating parking regulations in downtown Lewiston. The free market will decide. If you can't park your car, you're not going to live there. Let the free market decide it. So I have no issues at all on changing parking requirements and density. So I'm in favor of it. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for all the extensive work done here and for the planning board's work done here. This was a lot to go through. There's been a lot of changes that had to be made. I was part of the planning board in December when you came to us then, and part of this process almost from the beginning. And I just want to thank you because this infill work that needs to be done and to ensure that we get the housing needs met that we have in this community, this is going to make a huge difference, and I just want to thank you.
Further discussion? Anything else you'd like to add, either Catherine or Chris? Director Hediger, you're good at this point? Okay. We are now moving to public comment for this agenda item.
Jason Lavoie, 242 Park Street in Lewiston. Having lived in the Tree Streets for a number of years. I'm not originally from Lewiston, but I was homeless in Lewiston for a lot of years, and I chose to make the Tree Streets my home. And the reason I did that is because I saw an opportunity, and I saw the diversity of our city in that area, and I felt it was the best spot for me. And I really feel that the Tree Street neighborhood really needs this development, and I'm really proud of our city for this grant. I think it's a great way to move forward, especially when we talk about the homeless situation. and the homeless shelter issue, a totally another issue altogether. But creating more housing in the downtown in this area will be awesome. I'm excited about the business opportunity, about, co-op, grocery stores, and healthy foods and everything. I'm just so happy. And as a Tree Street resident for a number of years, I'm just so happy to see this happening. And I look forward to you guys approving this. I think it would be great. As a resident of Lewiston and a voter in Lewiston, I think it's awesome that our tree streets are going where they are with this grant. I think it's awesome. And I hope you approve this. I don't see why you wouldn't. It's transformal for our community to better our community. Empty lots are not okay when we have a homeless population the way it is in our city, and I hope you approve this as a resident of the Tree Streets. I really think it's very important to approve this policy. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Lund. I work at Community Credit Union on Pine Street. I just have a statement I'd like to share with you all, written by Jen Hogan, our CEO, who couldn't be here this evening. She's at a conference. Several years ago, Community Credit Union had a decision to make: leave the downtown and build a new state-of-the-art building, or stay committed to our downtown Pine Street location. In 2017, we made a nearly $1 million investment in our Pine Street location because we can see and we believe in what is happening. We have been involved in the choice work from the very beginning, hosting pop-up discussions and mapping sessions, helping to bring the community together to make our neighborhood a better place to live and work. The work thus far has been incredible to be part of and witness. I have seen residents, our city officials, and businesses come together like they have never done before, demonstrating how powerful collaboration and genuine care for our community truly makes a difference. The continued work around choice is monumental to rebuilding our neighborhood and helping our business, such as the credit union, continue to grow and prosper. We fully support the initiatives and thank the council in advance for the support in continuing this journey. Thank you.
Further public comment? Back to the council. When I've had discussions in years past with business owners and members of the community, we talking about the need for a game changer here in Lewiston, and choice for sure is it. Correct me. I realize it's 30 million, but it's going to leverage approximately 90 to 100. Is that correct, Catherine? Mm-hmm. Okay. And the amount of development that's going to be happening, the ripple effect, it's going to completely transform not just this neighborhood, but this entire city. And I'm very, very excited, and I appreciate your help, Catherine, Chris, and Director Heidegger. Thank you. You too, Administrator Hunter. Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you both very much. Madam Clerk, am I to understand we're on agenda item number 14?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Item number 14, amendments to the personnel policies regarding procedures for the non-union Maine PERS Retire Rehire Program. Requested action to approve the amendments to the City Policy Manual number 22 personnel policies regarding the non-union Maine PERS Retire Rehire Program as recommended by the Human Resources Director and City Administration.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Clement, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Or I apologize, councilors. We have Director Terrio here. Would you like to start us off with anything?
Yeah, so I just wanted to explain that this is the policy that's already in place. We're just looking to amend the policy to keep it in compliance. And in a time that recruiting and retaining quality staff can be difficult, I think that keeping this program is very important.
Discussion from the council? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Director Terrio. Agenda item number 15.
Item number 15, resolve, making an appropriation for the water, sewer, and stormwater budgets for fiscal year 2023. Requested action to approve the resolve, making an appropriation for the water, sewer, and stormwater budgets for fiscal year 2023.
I have a motion, Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Discussion? Anything, Administrator Hunter?
No, I would just offer that all three funds were discussed during the budget deliberations, and there were no recommended adjustments, and there are no anticipated rate increases, as approving this budget would forward that need.
Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 16.
Item number 16, order authorizing the city administrator to enter into a 10-year contract with the Mid-Maine Waste Action Corporation for solid waste management. Requested action, be it ordered that the city council is hereby authorizing the city administrator to enter into a 10-year contract with the Mid-Maine Waste Action Corporation for solid waste management.
So moved.
Councilor Jelinas, followed by Councilor Pease. Director Brenchik, would you like to start us off?
I'd just like to say that this contract in partnership with MWAC has been going on since 2007. They've been a great partner. This is another 10-year with a 5-year renewable for a long-term relationship with our trash going to the ash instead of going to the landfill as straight trash. So this helps us prolong the life of our landfill, saves us millions of dollars. It's a great partnership.
Discussion from the council. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. Director Brenchek, may I ask, do we have specifics on other communities sending their ash to our community to be stored there after it's been burned?
We do not allow that from anybody else. There are 13 member communities for MWAC. So we take all the ash from them, and that's it. We do not allow any other trash going into our landfill.
So even though but we still have 13 communities outside of Lewiston that their ash is burnt and it is going in our landfill, and does that include Auburn?
Yes.
I just wanted to put that on record that, we have a lot of comments going back and forth between Lewiston and Auburn recently, and I'd like Auburn to recognize that Lewiston is taking your ash. Lewiston, we have that in our landfill that could eventually, in the future, affect our community, and I just want to put that on record. Thank you.
Further comment from the council? Public comment on this agenda item?
Hi, my name's Josh Managine. I live in Ward 1, Lewiston. I just wanted to bring to your attention that we are indeed depositing ash from 13 different communities into our landfill, and we do not require that the communities that are depositing ash into that landfill recycle, which puts more ash in our landfill. We also don't offer recycling to all of our residents due to the fact that we run both residential and commercial, which creates a situation where 20% of the households here don't have the option of recycling unless they purchase the city option. And our deal with Casella is that we're supposed to get free recycling. So thinking about the cost of a landfill over the period of time and how quickly it gets filled, we might want to consider putting some restrictions or changing some of the ways that we handle our trash, because when that bill comes due in 10 to 15 years, when our landfill is full, it's going to be a very expensive proposition, probably more expensive than the filtration system. So just want to put that bug in your ear. Thank you so much.
Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Director Brunchick. Agenda item number 17.
Item number 17, resolve to confirm the city administrator's appointment of Tracy Roy to the position of Finance Director Treasurer as required by the city charter. Requested action to adopt the resolve confirming the appointment of Tracy Roy as the Finance Director Treasurer for the city of Lewiston in accordance with the city charter as of June 2nd, 2022.
May I have a motion? Councilor McCarthy, followed by Councilor LaChapelle. Discussion? Or, well, before that, do you want to say anything, Administrator Hunter?
No, I think Tracy has the skill sets to come to our community. She's serving that role in a neighboring community now, and I think she'll be a good fit.
Discussion from the council? Public comment for this agenda item?
Jason Lavoy, 242 Park Street. I will say that your amazing city administrator held this position before, and I trust her judgment. She is awesome, and she does awesome at her job. And who better to make this appointment than Heather Hunter? Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the council. We're continuing with public comment for this agenda item.
Hi, Ron Potvin, 291 Pond Road. Is this the Tracy Roy that was on Auburn?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I just want to take this opportunity to say, went back when I reminded you all, I was a city councilor in Auburn back from 2005, 2009. And Tracy Roy was our appointee, and I'll tell you, it was fabulous. Her knowledge, her abilities, her communication, is off the charts, and we were going through a very difficult time, and she managed to maneuver right through all of it. So it's a really good appointment. I'm very glad to see that she'll be coming here to work with you guys. Thank you.
Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
And Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Administrator Hunter, when is her expected start date?
Her start date is June 2nd, Thursday, June 2nd.
Oh, right. Thank you. Agenda item number 18.
Item number 18, resolve, reaffirming a commitment to the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Requested action to approve the resolve, reaffirming a commitment to the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Harriman,
Second.
Councilor Jelinas. Discussion. Councilor Scott, or Councilor Harriman.
So my intent with this resolve was, we've been discussing these topics a lot around the city recently, and my intention was to just sort of reset the conversation in a positive way and make sure that all of our constituents know that they're valued and they're respected, and hopefully this can help move the city forward and not backward. Thanks.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to thank you, Councilor Harriman, for putting this and asking for this to be on the agenda. I think that in this day and age, this is something that we need to absolutely reaffirm. There was so much work put into this over the last couple of years by the former council, former mayor, the ad hoc committee that was put in place. And this is necessary work, not only for our city, but for our schools. This is great work being done. Amazing people that are doing the work. We have an incredible director of equity and diversity. And I am proud to sit here today and say, especially after what we saw over this weekend and what we see still happening in our country, that we as a city reaffirm our equity, our diversity, and we welcome everybody into our community. I am proud to live in Lewiston and have such a diverse community. Thank you.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the operative words here are acknowledging, supporting, and reaffirming, and like my fellow councilors have just expressed, I think this is important, and I thank you, Councilor Harriman, for bringing it forward. As a councilor who sat on the previous ad hoc committee formed by our previous Mayor Care on equity and diversity. We brought forth recommendations to the previous council in February of 2021, and then recommendations were brought forth in April of 2021, and then adopted. You know, the City of Lewiston's first equity statement came forward, and that was a lot of work that was done, like people have said. So I think resurfacing that in your resolve is important, and I thank you for that work. And I'll be supporting this.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment on this agenda item.
Jason Lavoy, 242 Park Street in Lewiston. I want to thank Councilor Harriman and those that proposed this resolve. I want to just point out that this weekend's tragedy in Buffalo, New York was a tragedy. If you look at the facts of the case, it was racially motivated based on the manifesto put out by the perpetrator. I want to second point out that you just approved a World Refugee Day on your agenda, which if you are saying no to diversity, inclusion, and reaffirming our city's commitment to diversity and inclusion, I would say number 8 shouldn't have been approved, because we need to stand up for diversity in our city. It's important that we put aside the rhetoric and division that is put in our city on racial impacts. And we include everyone, no matter what walk of life you come from, whether in our schools or on our streets. Everyone should be included. Now, a few years ago, I stood before the city council and I said some words, not this city council, but a different city council, some words that I regret as far as race goes. I take those words back. I've gotten to know many of my neighbors and many of my fellow Lewiston citizens who just happen to be different from me because of their skin color or for various reasons. And I regret those words that I said. I apologize for that. But some people have a change in mindset. And I believe in the Bible, as a Christian person, love thy neighbor as thyself, as God's most and Jesus' most important commandment. I will always love my neighbor, no matter their skin color, no matter what walk of life they come from. I encourage you to support this and bring our city together. It's important. It does not divide our city. It brings us together as one city, no matter your skin color, your religion, whatever it takes. Thank you.
So, Alex Diamond Stanek. I'm a resident of Ward 2 at One Bowden Drive. Just like to say I've enjoyed all of the 7-0 votes so far, so I'm hoping that trend can continue here. So as a Lewiston resident, as a homeowner, as a taxpayer, as a father, I have 3 kids growing up in Lewiston. My parents live in Lewiston. I think it's important to affirm and reaffirm the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was impressed by the work that the Ad Hoc Committee did. So Councilor Jelinas, you mentioned that. Co-chair of that committee, Aisha Hall, was here just a moment ago. So thank you for that work. I think it's important to recognize both how history and the present day, that there are systems and institutions and policies across the country, but also in Maine and in Lewiston, that have been in some cases, and in some cases continue to be, inequitable. And so I think it's important as a city that we have a framework and values that allow us to focus on, 1, what we're doing well, but 2, what changes may need to be made to the status quo in our local community to ensure that we are living up to those values. So quoting from the city's equity statement, we want to be working together to build resilient and accessible communities where people of all cultures and identities can thrive. I'd also like to mention, to honor and value and support the work of Melissa Hugh, the city's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I look forward to subsequent discussion in the coming weeks by the City Council about adopting a more comprehensive policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion for the city. I hope that process can move forward. And just to wrap up, I mean, I see this as a way to sort of come together around values that I think all 7 members of the City Council can agree on, again, in another 7-0 vote. It brings me joy and hope, to think about, we were just thinking about the Choice Neighborhoods grant and the sort of the growth and development in our city, that we can sort of, in that moment, in that same meeting where we're doing that, also overcome some of the tension that's been described in the City Council recently, and what a positive message that would send to pass this resolution unanimously. So, thank you.
Siri Cressy. I live on Pierce Street in Ward 5. And I heard about this I'm not sure what the term is, but I'm going to say proposition, like 4 hours ago. So I haven't really looked into it a lot, but from what I have read and what I've heard from other people, I very much would stand behind it, especially if it's not just words, but actions as well. Because words are kind of hollow if they're not backed up with deeds. So I'm just putting my chip in favor. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Bro, and I live on Weber Avenue in Ward 7. I'd like to express my support for the resolve before you tonight that reaffirms a commitment to the principles and practices, as Siri just mentioned, of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Lewiston. First, I want to thank the City of Lewiston, but in particular our new Director of EDI, who's been mentioned multiple times tonight, Director Melissa Hugh, for the important work being done to prioritize DEI issues in Lewiston, including the recently adopted vision and mission statements to guide this work. I speak from my heart tonight. I know this can be a divisive issue, so I want to speak from my own experience here. I grew up in Lewiston in the 80s and 90s when most of the residents looked a lot like me and my white Catholic Franco-American family. I attended Lewiston Public Schools with just a handful of friends of color, including my now husband. But the truth is, it wasn't until I left Lewiston that I began to understand that there were so many ways to be and to live in the world that were not reflected in or by my experiences. Thankfully, I was guided to get curious, to ask questions, to open myself up to learning, not just about others, but about myself and why I understand the world the way I do. And I see that open and thoughtful approach reflected in the resolve and all of the work that's come before this resolve here tonight. There's a lot of evidence about how these kinds of open approaches can serve a thriving public life, our democratic and economic institutions, and schools. We hear all the time that if we want our young people to be successful when we send them off into the world, then they need to know how to function in an increasingly diverse American life alongside folks who don't share the same experiences and backgrounds as themselves. And while that's true, I'd like to offer a different reason for supporting this resolve tonight. One that I borrow from my mother, herself a Lewiston-born and raised kid, baby boomer generation. Though she gave her children wings, she always hoped we would return to invest ourselves back into this community that we love, and we did. I returned to Lewiston because I knew I could raise my mixed-race daughter in a place that was as comfortably familiar as it was wonderfully different from my childhood. I returned to Lewiston with the genuine hope that the higher education I got elsewhere could serve the working class communities that raised me and made access to that education possible in the first place. I honor my ancestors who worked hard to get me to where I got. I returned to Lewiston specifically to learn more about others and about myself and about this place that I so love. As a youth studies scholar, but perhaps more importantly, as a Lewiston kid who has spent hours talking to and spending time with today's Lewiston kids, I know that it's public statements of value like the one before you tonight that call our young back to us. So, Councilor Scott, you mentioned the Youth Advisory Committee and those students coming back to live in Lewiston. I want to acknowledge the reality that this approach is not easy. And it asks a lot of us, not the least of which is to be vulnerable. I realize I'm out of time. Just a few more
yes.
minutes? No? Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. I just encourage you all to support this resolve tonight.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Tobin Williamson. I live at 361 College Street in Ward 2. So I moved to Lewiston last summer. My partner and I moved up here from the Louisville, Kentucky area when she got a job at Bates College. She grew up down in Nashua and New Hampshire, but I'm from Arkansas. I've lived in Seattle and Chicago and Europe, and so we didn't really know what to expect from Lewiston. I briefly heard of Lewiston a couple of times, but I didn't know much about it. And so as I started to do more research into it, I was really impressed and surprised that, this small city in Maine had such a unique heritage of French speakers, of Irish immigrants and things like that. And then I started to read more and more about, the Somalis and other refugees that had settled here about 20 years ago. And I thought, this it's kind of surprising, but it's really cool. And so we moved up here last August, and in that time, I realize it's been less than a year that I've been a Lewistonian, but we've really come to fall in love with the city. Some of our favorite things to do are, most weekends we can be found at the Italian Bakery. We sometimes go to events at the Franco Center. I like to grab lunch at Mogadishu down on Lisbon Street with my friend Mohammed. In my work world, I mentioned earlier, I'm the advocacy manager with the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition. I work closely with Lewiston residents like Fatuma Hussein and Abdul Karim Saeed. So, this just really shows what diversity is for this city. Some of our things that we're looking forward to this summer are the Pride Festival, World Refugee Day that was referenced earlier. And so, this, at least in our opinion, I'm sorry that she can't be here tonight. She's got another commitment. But this really shows how diversity is one of Lewiston's greatest strengths. It is a small city, certainly smaller than I've lived in before, but it's got a really cosmopolitan feel to it. We love the people. We love hearing the different languages. We love, going to places like Mother India and Tina's Thai, all these immigrant-owned restaurants. And we feel it really adds to the vitality of the city. And we love that, but at the same time, we're disheartened by the comments that you'll see on the Sun Journal's Facebook page or the Lewiston Rocks Facebook group, or just go to Walmart and see some of the bumper stickers. And that kind of shows that a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is still very much needed in this community. And so, just wanted to express my support for this resolution, my gratitude to Councilor Harriman for introducing it, and I encourage you all to support it as well. And go Maples, and we hope to be here for many years to come. Thank you.
I love it.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Phoenix McLaughlin. I'm a resident of Ward 1. I also have the pleasure of serving on the Finance Committee with Councilor Clement and Councilor McCarthy. I just wanted to make a comment in support of the resolution this evening. I think, democracy of, by, and for the people is a challenging thing. And to be honest, when I was growing up, I remember getting the sense that Lewiston was definitely a city that struggled with fighting over its own identity some of the time. But when my fiance and I were thinking about where we wanted to settle down a few years ago, Lewiston was actually an easy choice. It's, in my opinion, it has some of the greatest potential of any city in the state. Few places have people from so many walks of life, raising families together, working together, going to school together, growing old together. Lewiston has been a destination for people just looking to have a good, simple life for over 150 years. Often not starting with much, and that has led to hardship and conflict, no doubt. But it has also built a foundation for real community strength. And I think, the choice for every city leader is always whether to build on that strength or to lean into conflict. And I think in recent years, it's been great to see how many people have chosen to focus on building. And I think, things like that Choice Neighborhood Grant have really shown how people can come together and invest in the city. But I also think, that advancement can be constrained if some groups feel cut out or disrespected or ignored by city institutions, and especially the city government, especially the schools, and that can happen too easily, often without even any malice or ill intent on the people in charge. And it's not easy, for 7 people to represent a city of 40,000. That's a tough ratio. And it doesn't necessarily happen by default that everyone is able to reach out and feel connected. I think by default people tend to retreat more into their own camps and put up their own walls around their neighborhood or their clique. And it does take deliberate effort to step back and check whether or not the institutions that you lead are welcoming to everyone in the city and are serving everyone they are charged with serving. So what I see in this resolution is just really a simple reminder of good governance. Just an annual checkup saying that no matter the many differences of the people across this city, those in this chamber will see to it that all are listened to, spoken for, and represented. So I hope you will vote yes in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Hi, Joshua Najin, Ward 1. And I've written something, so I'm going to read it. In order for governance to be valid, it must be transparent, democratic, participatory, and representative. Our city is a city of immigrants. Not many of us can claim a connection to this community that spans more than a couple of centuries. Many less can claim a connection with this land before colonization. The full strength and depth of our community is not represented by the folks sitting behind the dais in front of me. But if the Sun Journal is to be believed, some members of council have worked to deny agency and access to power sharing models that recognize the worth of all who choose to participate in the American experiment, which is why DEI work is urgent and important in this city and for our residents. It's not the council's purview to save the children from the school committee or the boogeyman of CRT. If we care about the children, we could have increased funding for our recreation department or found new and innovative ways to create opportunities for mentorship and strong ties to community by supporting youth leadership skills. The truth is almost 50% of our LPS students identify as either 2 races or not Caucasian. Over 25% of our students are on IEPs. They worship God via 3 separate Abrahamic traditions, are polytheistic, or don't believe in God at all. Neither our students nor our residents are a monolith. It's the diversity of our people that gives our city power. Some are first or second generation immigrants chasing the promise of the American dream, or come from families who arrived on our shores fleeing strife and conflict from the countries they hailed from. Some are poor, some are homeless, some are gay, lesbian, bisexual, polysexual. Many are black and brown. Some have physical and or mental health challenges. Some are aged. Many are younger than the average age of the current council. All have value and all make contributions, many in ways that are impossible without the perspective and experience born by their historical culture and identity. All should have a voice and representation. I urge you to recommit not only to affirming the value of DEI work, but also to the value of our community and the people who reside in it that you are sworn to serve. Thank you.
Further public comment? Back to the council. I noticed we have Aisha Hall in the audience this evening. Thank you so much for everything you have done for us. Further discussion? I'd just like to add that I appreciate this resolution on the agenda this evening, and I think, yes, we are a welcoming city. We should be celebrating diversity, and I think this resolution says a lot about who we are. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward
Yes.
2? And Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 19.
Item number 19, order authorizing the city administrator to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement and execute all necessary closing documents for the acquisition of 10 Blay Boulevard. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the city administrator to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement and execute all necessary closing documents for the acquisition of 10 Blay Boulevard.
Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Harriman. Anything you'd like to add, Administrator Hunter?
This is the parcel that was described when we discussed Cody Park, which is part of the National Park Exchange. And it just provides, if the seller wishes to move forward, it provides authorization so we can effectuate that sale.
Discussion among the council? Public comment for this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 20.
Item number 20, resolve to direct the city administrator to draft a Lewiston Seniors Advisory Council policy and present it for council action at a future meeting. Requested action, be it resolved by the city council that the council hereby directs the city administrator to draft a Lewiston Seniors Advisory Council policy and present it to city council for action at a future meeting.
May I have a motion? Councilor McCarthy, followed by Councilor Clement, and discussion among the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason for this particular resolve is, after talking with my colleagues on the council, I believe the overwhelming majority of us decided we'd like to see a standing committee, much like a bookend to the Youth Advisory Council that would be available to advise the council on matters pertaining to seniors. Earlier this term, we passed a resolve recognizing our senior community as being very valuable to the Lewiston community, that they tend to be the people who are involved in government. They've been, in many cases, long-term residents, lifelong residents, and they've invested in the city. And we think it only right to give them a place where they can advise us and have sort of a sense of permanence, if you will, as opposed to being an ad hoc committee. We think it deserves that. We'd like to see the Youth Advisory Council, a Seniors Advisory Council. And we have plenty of people that are willing to serve on said council. I thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Clement. I fully support this standing committee, so thank you. Further, now, sorry, just to be clear, Administrator Hunter, what would be the step, or what would be the steps in this process? Should this be should this agenda item move forward this evening?
So at this rate, if it was approved, then I would begin to draft a policy that talked about membership, that talked about terms. I did outline, some of the general components that would be included in the agenda item information sheet. That would be presented to council, vetted at that discretion, and then a final form would be presented for council action.
Would should we talk about the particulars now, or would there be a workshop scheduled?
There is a workshop scheduled.
Okay, so at this point, we should discuss, I guess, whether we would like this or not, and then we could discuss particulars at the workshop, or am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay. Further discussion from the council? Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to thank Councilor Clement for bringing this forward. I, too, have heard from several community members that would like to see a standing advisory committee for our senior community, and I am very much in favor of fully supporting this. Thank you.
Public comment for this agenda item.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Tobin Williamson, 361 College Street, 2nd Ward. Now, I may be biased on this because my fiance is teaching a class literally called The Psychology of Aging at Bates College right now, but I also wanted to endorse this proposal. I think it's a wonderful idea. You often hear many times that Maine is the oldest state in the country, so certainly more so here in Maine than in many places. This is a pressing issue. I love the work that the Youth Advisory Council does, as someone has pointed out already, and so I think it's only fair, and it would be a very great idea to have, on the other edge of the spectrum, a senior committee. So just wanted to throw my support behind this resolution and hope to see it passed. Thank you.
Back to the council. Councilor Pease.
Yes, I'm just curious if your wife would be interested in being involved in this somehow.
I'm sure she would be happy to do that. I know she's always welcoming experts in her class as guest speakers. She shares my passion for civic engagement. Like I said, she was hoping to be here this evening, but had another commitment. But yes, certainly this would be something that she would be interested in. Already would.
Please ask her. Thank you.
Further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure. Councilor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
When will be the workshop, Administrator Hunter?
That's what I was just thinking. I believe it's sometime in June, but I will send the date out in an email to everyone.
Thank you. Agenda item number 21.
I think that was the third item
Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Item number 21, yes. Order authorizing the transfer of funds from the American Rescue Plan Act account to hire a consultant to assist with the coordination of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act grant funds. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the transfer of funds from the American Rescue Plan Act account to hire a consultant to assist with the coordination of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act grant funds.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Anything you'd like to say, Administrator Hunter?
No, the council workshopped this item recently.
Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 22.
Item number 22, order authorizing the transfer of funds in the amount of $77,568 to fund the expanded scope of services for the Riverfront Master Plan to include the canals, Island Point, economic infill, and multimedia public outreach in order to gain a cohesive master plan for the city's waterway assets. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the transfer of funds in the amount of $77,568 to fund the expanded scope of services for the Riverfront Master Plan to include the canals, Island Point, economic infill, and multimedia public outreach in order to gain a cohesive master plan for the city's waterway assets.
May I have a motion? Councilor Pease,
Second.
followed by Councilor Jelinas. And I just wanted to say thank you, Administrator Hunter, for organizing a Saturday tour, I don't know, a Saturday or two ago. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Discussion from the council. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, just a real, vote of support about this. This is exciting. The tour was very helpful in understanding the project, and I just think the consideration, that waterway is amazing. There's just so much asset in that. So to see something actually happening as a lifelong resident of the city, I just think it's a great thing. So.
Public comment. Back to the council. Just to echo what Councilor Jelinas said, I think the faster that we get these canals redeveloped and everything, I think it's going to be great for our city and economic development. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
We're up to reports and updates from the council. Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to give a brief report from the last school committee meeting, which was held on Monday, May 9th. We did several policy updates again. But some of the exciting stuff that happened was that we had some great recognitions happen to our Farwell principal recognized that their equity team, and they also had their equity team recognize 2 teachers who started a civil rights students group at Farwell School. And we had, I believe it was 5 young ladies who stood up and spoke about learning about using their voices in the public and learning about being advocates for themselves and advocates for their body. And I got to tell you, I was kind of excited. They said they like to wreak a little havoc. These were 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and I encouraged them that I was a person that liked to wreak a little havoc myself at that age, and I was I really liked what they had to say. I also want to point out that as I had mentioned, I believe at our last meeting, that our Lewiston Regional Tech Center Skills USA National Conference is coming up, and all the students that I had pointed out had won the different awards. They are now going to the national conference where 12,000 students across the country will be competing, and they are actually going to be doing a fundraiser on May 27th at the Green Ladle, where the Green Ladle's food truck will be selling items and having a lunch special, and this will be to raise money to help those kids make it to that competition. And I also want to remind everybody that our Lewiston High School graduation will be June 10th at Lewiston High School's field, and I saw that everybody got an invitation, so I hope that everybody's going to be able to go. Today, the mayor, myself, Representative Kristen Cloutier, Representative Margaret Craven, most of our school committee members all celebrated at the Green Ladle, our top 10 students, and that was an amazing thing to see. I have never heard students speak so much, have had to go through so much. Their sophomore year, they were hit with the pandemic. They literally had to pretty much stop going to school. These kids not only most of them have jobs, they're on other committees, they have almost perfect grades. They have also, almost all of them, overcome some extremely incredible life crises from birth to where they are today. And I think it's going to be a great thing if we can all show up and really support and cheer on these kids as they graduate. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy?
Just to give an update on the airport board, I haven't talked much about it. But we are moving ahead with some construction and repairs that were scheduled for around the hangars on the far side of the field. We're looking at upgrading the fencing around the airport. Right now, the way the fencing is laid out, that in the wintertime, the deer can just walk over the fence because of the snow drifts and all of that, and so it creates a hazard on the field. And the other big thing that I know the mayor is really excited about is the simulator is going out to bid. So that is moving forward. It looks like, depending on which one we get, that the community college system is going to sign on with teaching over there, and it's going to be an exciting time. There's a lot of good things happening over there. The new restaurant is awesome. They're doing well. I spoke with Dan Karen after the meeting, and that was their first night that they had dinner over there, a Thursday night, and they had 70 customers come in. During the weekend, they are allowed to go out into the airport area to serve their customers. There's an outside area, and they're very, very pleased with what's going on, and they wanted to offer their thanks for all the support we gave them. So good things are happening out there.
Have you eaten there?
No. Hopefully Saturday.
Gotcha. Yeah. More reports and updates from the council? Councilor LaChapelle?
Mr. Mayor, as Vice Chair of the Lewiston Auburn Water Protection Commission, LawPAC, we are having an emergency meeting Monday night to discuss legal matters. I don't know what that could be, and we will return with more information.
I assume that will be an executive session?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Further reports and updates? Madam Clerk, next agenda item?
Next agenda item is item number 24, any other business counselors or staff may have relating to Lewiston City Government.
Councilor McCarthy.
I have two things. One, the first is I had a constituent reach out to me about unsafe driving practices on Central Avenue while the Lewiston Middle School is, the students are getting there and getting back and leaving. On Friday in the morning, she stopped her vehicle, put her flashers on to let her daughter get out and walk across the street, and she was flipped off, yelled at. The guy in the pickup truck drove right around her and took off. Very, very unsafe. And then in the afternoon, while she was waiting for her daughter to come out of school, she witnessed two young girls in a vehicle blast right past all the school buses with their flashers on. And in fact, they drove around a vehicle that had been stopped further up in the line of buses, drove around them and took off. Then she witnessed a couple of young boys in a vehicle just drive right past the buses. Kids were getting off the bus. Her daughter was almost hit. So I don't know what we can do. I know Friday was an unusual event because the resource officer wasn't there, and I guess the resource officer goes out on the Central Avenue, corner of campus and Central and keeps cars from passing through while the buses are loading. But, and I was in contact with the police chief, and he's going to step up patrols there. Perhaps what needs to happen is if the resource officer is out sick in the future, then perhaps we could direct a police officer to be stationed there in his absence to make it a safer place, because it's the last thing we need is a student walking out in the street and getting clipped by a crazy driver.
Yes, agreed. And I think there was some sidewalk improvements happened very recently. Absolutely. Administrator Hunter, would you like to say anything?
No, I just wanted to share something that Councilor McCarthy mentioned, that it was shared with the police chief, and they are looking into increasing patrols and seeing if they can help with that situation.
And I apologize, not sidewalk improvements, crosswalk improvements.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anything else, Councilor McCarthy?
Yes, I have something that I've been wanting to say things, and I've bit my tongue, and my tongue is bleeding too much, so I'm going to vent. I want to take a moment tonight to express how upset I am at the behavior exhibited by some Lewiston elected officials. A couple of months ago, myself and some of my fellow councilors did not follow standard procedures when we made an appointment to the planning board. For that, we were thoroughly vilified by other councilors, opponents, and general public and the press. So be it. I'm over it. What upsets me now is the continuing attacks. We have school board members acting like children on social media, making false accusations about other elected officials they disagree with. We have councilors and the mayor spreading misinformation about other councilors. We have political party members colluding with elected officials to remove a sitting board member. Quite frankly, I've had enough. We have real work to do here in Lewiston, and the unwarranted attacks on myself and some of my fellow councilors, along with all the pumped-up charges in the media, has to end. There are some elected officials that should be ashamed of their behavior. I took ownership of my mistake. They need to own up to theirs.
Further reports on what agenda item are we on?
We're on item number 24. Any other business councilors or staff may have relating to Lewiston City Government.
Anything else from any other councilor? Councilor Peace.
I agree with Councilor McCarthy. There's too many things happening. The amount of misinformation that's being put out there is discredited other elected officials. I'm really surprised. I'm not sure what some of them are thinking or what they feel they're going to get by some smearing. But I think it's a disservice to this body and the oath of the office they take. I think it's the hypocrisy of it all is quite astounding. And as I stated before, I'm done with this, and I'm discouraged that we have to keep going through this. Thank you.
Councillor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not speaking tonight to declare war on anyone or anything. However, when someone appears on television and calls myself and fellow councilors unethical, all while insisting they are a victim and just trying to do what's right, it becomes incumbent upon me to set the facts straight. A constituent recently wrote me saying, quote, "This whole issue could be labeled as the proverbial tempest in a teapot," end quote. As I myself have said previously, nothing that occurred was illegal, unethical, or wrong. Any number of members short of a quorum of any group, board, or body can collaborate and work on any issue prior to presentation to the entire body. In this instance, there have been some councilors who have feigned righteous indignation. There has been a rush to label certain other members as intolerant or racist. All of these claims are devoid of fact. In my life and career, I've dealt with a variety of unsavory characters. I've been shot at, kicked, bitten, and called every name in the book. To call me a racist will have no effect. For a member of this body to sling accusations that myself and or others are working to eliminate such things as equity and diversity training is blatantly false and defamatory. To do so on social media after making condemnations earlier that such things were unsavory at best is truly hypocritical. This body has passed a number of resolutions pertaining to these issues. There was an ad hoc committee under a former mayor that gave birth to an equity and diversity policy. Just tonight, we had a resolve to reaffirm all this, which has been previously passed and is currently in effect. A recent comment from a constituent asks why we're resurrecting this dead horse. Another constituent asked, what's next? Will we be asked to reaffirm our budget resolve? What about every other piece of legislation we've passed? How far back do we go? We need to stop. We need to stop needless affirmation resolutions and move the city and its business forward. Racism, as measured by any metric, should not be tolerated by any person or elected official. No one on this dais can accurately, effectively, or righteously label any other member of this body as intolerant, racist, or systemically racist. Currently, there are elected officials in Lewiston who insist on throwing gasoline on anything that smolders. The media insists on gaslighting these issues, apparently trying to sensationalize and sell because if it bleeds, it leads. I know this is the mentality of some media outlets, as I myself was a broadcast journalist in my younger years. Enough already. We've been chastised and belittled in a most condescending, pompous, and arrogant manner by the current ceremonial head of city government, who himself, along with the backing of the head of a city political committee, informed a city planning board member whose performance was not and has never been in question, that he needed to resign so the mayor could appoint another person to that position. Our ceremonial head of the city has acted as a bully and does so with members of city staff with apparent impunity, to the point where council members have received complaints of his actions. He then has the gall to call members of this council unethical. Politics is about the art of compromise. It is not and never should be. Rules are for thee and not for me. It's time we engage in civil discourse and interaction. I assure you all, your actions will determine my reactions. Okay? More often than not, we would prefer that our vote tallies be unanimous. That will not always be the case. If the ceremonial head of our city and other councilors feel the need to spread misinformation and bog us down with senseless drivel, then so be it. I am committed to the very things that led me to run for office in the first place. Those are reducing crime, attracting business, attracting development and market rate housing, providing our children with a great education, being a good steward of the taxpayers' money, and making Lewiston a place where all people are accepted and have a seat at the table. I yield. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard a lot of comments from the public in the last week since the hit piece in the Sun and Journal on May 8th, as well as the mayor's statements on May 9th, also social media posts by other elected officials. Most have been in support of my viewpoint, and that viewpoint is very simple. Racism is wrong. The exclusion of any group of people based on their ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or skin color is the personification of racism. When that is seen anywhere in our community, it is incumbent on us as city leaders to stand united against it. It saddens me that I have colleagues up here that will willingly and openly support racism in the Lewiston Public Schools. To categorize the draft resolution that Councilor Clement and I were working on as racist, when in reality it is racism we are standing against, is wrong. One counselor this weekend went so far on social media as to claim that we were, quote, writing resolves to stop equity and diversity training in our schools, unquote. This is a flat-out lie. The fact that we have elected officials knowingly spreading misinformation in our community for political gain is shameful. I, and many in this community, wholeheartedly do not agree with Bowie's use of the term white supremacist to define all white people. Not all white people believe that a white race is superior to all others and do, in fact, want equality amongst all people. I also object to the exclusion by EOCC of all and only white teachers from a group designed for Lewiston educators to discuss racial issues. Racism is not solved by exclusion. During my campaign, I was approached by teachers, former teachers, and parents. They all had concerns with the direction of the school system and the potential harm issues like this will bring to our children. The resolve Councilor Clement and I are working on attempted to address some of these important issues. A resolution that by any measure was being fleshed out as all resolutions brought forward by councilors are in their infancy. For any elected official to stand up and openly say there was impropriety there, again, for their own political gain, is a flat-out lie and a disservice to the people of Lewiston. I will not sit back and become a target of feigned outrage. I will not sit quietly while any group of people in Lewiston are being excluded from important discussions in our public schools because of the color of their skin. If others up here are okay with this blatant racism, then consider me firmly in your way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other updates for city business from councilors? Do we need to go, now we're up to 25. Do we need to have a vote to go back in? Or
No,
is
we're
this
continuing it.
Okay, so at this point, we are continuing our executive session that we started at the beginning, or just before the beginning of this council meeting. And that's where we will go. We will not be coming back. You all have a wonderful evening.